It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 576, The Nordic Alliance heads south to the English Channel. It seems that the Bismarck government had already known the situation in France, and launched a more powerful attack in eastern France. On September 20, 1869, under the opposition of the Paris government and the nobility, Emperor Napoleon III changed his original plan to withdraw from eastern France, stop the withdrawal of troops, and decided to defend the city of Metz in western Lorraine at all costs. On September 22, 1869, the Second Army led by Prince Karl Friedrich of Prussia mobilized 110,000 Prussian troops to confront a Rhine army led by Napoleon III with 100,000 troops centered on Metz. With the occupied Alsace as the center, Crown Prince Frederick led a Prussian army of 200,000 to threaten Belfort, France. In the north, the province of Namur was already in danger, and the Prussian First Army, Karl Friedrich von Steinmetz, commanded 130,000 troops there, and the French were breathing heavily. With three sides seemingly at a disadvantage, the sick Napoleon III finally couldn't stand it anymore. On September 25, 1869, he handed over the command of the Rhine army to Marshal Bazaine. On the same day, the navies of the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden formed a joint fleet together at the port of Zeeland in the south of the Raampot waterway in the Netherlands. The Dutch military announced that it would conduct the same exercise from September 26, 1869 to the end of October in the northeast of the Strait of Dover, near the coast of West Flanders, Rotterdam, and Amsterdam. It will be conducted off the coast of Denmark in early November, in the Norwegian Sea of the United Kingdom of Sweden and Norway in mid-November, and in late November it will be conducted off the coast of Sweden in the Baltic Sea. The public purpose of the three-country exercise is not only to stop pirates, but also to safeguard the maritime interests of the three countries and to counterattack against acts that intend to damage the national interests of the three countries. It is said that this time, in addition to the steam battleship Rotterdam, the Netherlands also dispatched 4 first-class sailing battleships named after provinces, including Zeeland, North Brabant, West Flanders, and East Flanders. In addition, there are 10 second- to 6th-class sailing battleships named after cities, towns, and villages. The Netherlands dispatched a total of 15 warships. Denmark's North Jutland and South Jutland, 2 first-class sailing battleships, and 5 other sailing battleships of various levels, a total of 7 ships. Sweden dispatched 3 first-class sailing battleships, Stockholm, Oslo, and Gothenburg, as well as the second-class sailing battleships Mama and Bergen, and 5 other sailing battleships of various levels, a total of 10 ships. The combined fleet of the three countries reached 32 ships with a tonnage of 67,000 tons, which is enough to match half of Denmark and Sweden at present. It reached 1/3 of France. However, France now deploys 1/3 in the Far East. The Mediterranean Sea has deployed the remaining half of the French home fleet, so the scale of the French fleet deployed along the Atlantic coast is actually only about the same as that of the Netherlands, Sweden, and Denmark. Moreover, due to the different positions of the French fleet, the English Channel is equally divided with the Bay of Biscay, so the French fleet in the English Channel is only half of the combined fleet of the Netherlands and other three countries. This news swept across Europe like a tornado, and even shocked the American countries that have been paying attention to the European war. Today, the influence of the Kingdom of the Netherlands under the leadership of William IV has begun to take shape in Europe. It is no longer the three-no kingdom that had no resistance, no choice, and no strength to be slaughtered on the issue of Belgium when facing the major European powers decades ago. With the rise of the Netherlands in the past 10 years, the news of the Kingdom of the Netherlands has shocked and envied all countries. The Netherlands has expanded its territory in the Far East, and its economic progress has surpassed 6 and 5. The top 5 are Britain, France, Prussia, Austria, and the United States. In terms of military technology, it is on par with Britain and France, and even better than Prussia. In 1862, it used the Boers to defeat the powerful Britain in South Africa, and defeated the Kingdom of Portugal in Mozambique, Angola, and Congo in Africa. These have confirmed that the Netherlands has become a European military power. In terms of naval scale, The Netherlands has surpassed Spain and is almost on par with France in terms of public naval tonnage, catching up with France and looking up to Britain. Therefore, every move of the Netherlands has actually been seen by the top leaders of European countries. This time, the members of the Nordic alliance of the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden chose the Franco-Prussian War to conduct exercises in Belgium, a sea close to the belligerent France. What does the Netherlands mean? What does William IV mean? Since the three Dutch countries were able to drive their warships to the French border this time, and that was in the eastern sea of the British Isles, did that mean that the Dutch could also drive their warships to other places to intimidate? So many people are trying to guess what William IV and the Kingdom of the Netherlands think in order to make countermeasures. And why did Sweden and Denmark choose to stand with the Netherlands at this time? Obviously, this exercise is aimed at intimidating France. Prussia's maritime operations are mainly in the Baltic Sea, and the current war is also taking place in France. At the foreign minister level meeting just held in London, these countries all chose the Prussian side, and combined with the current military exercises, everything is clear. The question is, what do they get? This is the idea of all other countries. Even Alexander II of the Russian Empire, one of the most powerful countries in Europe, Queen Victoria of the British Empire, and Franz Joseph I of the Austro-Hungarian Empire were very puzzled by the actions of the three Dutch countries. Only Bismarck and William I, who were far away in Berlin, understood that this was a self-protection move made by the Netherlands just in case. Bismarck: there are three benefits for the Netherlands to do this. First, it consolidates the dominance of the three Nordic countries. Second, it allows the Nordic alliance to make a bigger military voice in Europe. Third, it is the agreement between Prussia and the Netherlands. We are going to shock the world. Prussia will use the Luxembourg of the Kingdom of the Netherlands as a transit point. When the world thought that Prussia was attacking the French mainland according to the rules and at the current pace, no one could have imagined that we had signed an agreement with the Netherlands to use the Luxembourg as a transit point a few months ago. Look at the Franco-Prussian War, which is now divided into three major battlefields in the north, the middle and the south. The Duchy of Luxembourg is a natural barrier that France holds fast. If this barrier is suddenly lost, His Majesty Napoleon III, who has been suffering from a long illness, will probably be even worse off. William I smiled and said, "It is said that Prime Minister Bismarck was one of the suitors of Queen Eugenie at first. But at that time, Queen Eugenie was a beauty who could be compared with the current Queen Sissi of Austria-Hungary. No wonder people were fascinated by her. I think if Napoleon III of France knew about this, perhaps he would not let Queen Eugenie be regent." Bismarck said, "Perhaps, but Queen Eugenie's desire for power is something that many people cannot afford, including His Majesty Napoleon III." Chapter 577 Two Sons over France. The Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden actually chose to conduct naval exercises next to the English Channel at this time. Queen Victoria was puzzled. She was a little uncomfortable recently because her fourth daughter, Princess Louise, would marry Crown Prince Frederick, the Prince of King William II of Greece, in Athens on October 10, 1869. Since 3 months ago, British aristocrats and many conservative forces have complained about this. The reason is that if Princess Louise marries outside the British Empire and is too familiar with current British policies, it will cause a crisis for Britain. They were a little cautious in the first 2 months, but at the end of last month, a joint letter was directly sent to her in Buckingham Palace. So starting from this month, she really does not have a personal secretary around her. At present, she is considering letting her third daughter, Princess Alice, the Duchess of Argyll, who married John Campbell, the 9th Duke of Argyll, eat the meat again and become her personal secretary again. However, it is still in operation, and she feels a headache when she thinks of those people in the parliament. Thinking of the embarrassing appearance of Napoleon III being checked on the front line after Queen Eugenie became the regent of the Paris government, Queen Victoria's heart was cold. Will what is happening in France happen in Britain one day? Queen Victoria began to think, perhaps, there should be more checks and balances between the Tories and the Whigs. But before that, the provocations of several Dutch countries against France must be understood first. After that, the Queen issued an order for the First Fleet of Britain in the mainland to dispatch nearly half of the fleet to Dover in the southeast, and watch the Dutch, Danish, and Dutch joint fleets that were conducting exercises off the coast of West Flanders, the Netherlands, east of the Strait of Calais. However, both sides seemed unwilling to have misunderstandings, and did not get too close. On September 26, 1869, north of the English Channel in northern France, the coast of Ostend-Port, formerly Belgium, now West Flanders, the Netherlands, was officially launched, while the French troops were on guard at the port of Boulogne, a French territory in the southern part of the Nordic Union Navy. In the small Strait of Calais, there were actually 3 ports with a warship station with more than 130,000 tons. You have to know that this tonnage is the tonnage of Portugal before, which is enough to make it one of the top 7 in the World Navy rankings, and it also has the world's most advanced steam battleships. It can be said that this fleet alone is enough to defeat the Portuguese fleet and the 89 3 countries that followed. You have to know that these 3 countries are Italy, Prussia, and the United States. It's terrifying to think about it. Many people in London looked sideways, and even the Conservatives tried their best to encourage more people to support the British government to send more warships to threaten the Nordic Alliance fleet. But in the end it was stopped because Queen Victoria did not want to be thought of as intervening in the Franco-Prussian War. If that were the case, then her eldest daughter, Crown Princess Victoria, who married to Berlin, Prussia, would be very sad in the future. Britain has always wanted to suppress France's maritime power, but the actions of the combined fleet of the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden gave the Queen a different idea. So Britain chose to sit back. This made Napoleon III in Paris suffer. On September 28, 1869, General Bazaine, who had just taken over the position of French Marshal from Napoleon III, was facing the fierce attack of Prussia. He was uneasy, and the news that several countries in the Netherlands had sent to the northern coast made him even more anxious. So he was desperate and tried all kinds of methods. Without a good command and strategic plan, and under the pressure of Paris, he became more hesitant. Sometimes he was determined to push the Challenge Corps to join MacMahon, and sometimes he was determined to hold on to the defense of Metz, the last defensive fortress in the Lorraine region. When he decided to retreat to the Challenge Corps area on October 1, 1869, he had already lost the opportunity because Prussia gave him and everyone else an absolutely unexpected blow. It turned out that in the Battle of Mas-la-Tour on September 23 and the Battle of Gravelotte-Saint-Privat on September 25, the coalition forces showed incredible bravery. The French artillery fire was very fierce, and Canrobert and Goeben fought each other. Although the French successfully repelled the attack of the Prussian army and caused heavy losses to the Prussian First Army and the Guards, they failed to open the road to Verdun. Marshal Bazaine's Rhine army retreated to the Metz fortress again and fell into the encirclement of the Prussian First Army, Second Army, 7 corps and 3 cavalry divisions, totaling 160,000 people. Marshal MacMahon led 120,000 men, 393 artillery pieces, and 76 Mitre Jacques machine guns to retreat to Châlons. He had originally planned to lure the enemy deep into his territory and have a decisive battle with the Prussian army outside the city of Paris. The regent Queen Eugénie and the new Prime Minister of the French Empire, Charles Cousin Montauban, Count of Palaiseau, were worried that continuing to retreat would cause turmoil and revolution in France. Finally, Eugénie was persuaded and said to Napoleon III, "Only the Emperor's enemies will agree to MacMahon's return to Bahrain." So on October 3, a delegation led by the Speaker of the French Parliament, the Old Goose, came to the headquarters of Napoleon III, who was halfway back. The Emperor Napoleon III should not return to Paris, but should order MacMahon to march to Metz. Before Napoleon III could respond, Queen Eugénie, the regent of Paris, and the cabinet government held a meeting and sent a telegram to Emperor Napoleon III, saying, "If Marshal Bazaine in the Metz fortress is not supported, Paris will have extremely bad consequences." Faced with this situation, most people do not think that the capital Paris can defend against the Prussian attack, so there are doubts. Napoleon III believed in Queen Eugénie's telegram that agreed with this view, so Napoleon III agreed with this view and agreed to this order. In this way, the Châlons Corps went back and began to march from Reims to Sedan in the east of Paris. Napoleon III and MacMahon wanted to fight against the Prussian army in Namur province from Sedan, and then go south to Verdun to the southeast to help Marshal Bazaine in Metz. But what they didn't know was that this Châlons Corps was on the road to be annihilated at Sedan. What they didn't know even more was that to the east of Sedan, Bazaine's Rhine Corps had been targeted. The Prussian army wanted to use the Rhine Corps as bait to pull the Châlons Corps into the hook. Napoleon III and MacMahon had already jumped out of the distance of the fishing rod, but the order from Paris made them return to the road of no return again. It must be said that time and fate are also fate. MacMahon led his army from Reims to Sedan on October 4, 1869. At the same time, a false intelligence came from Berlin to Napoleon III, Queen Eugenie of Paris and the French government, saying that in addition to the Second Corps of Prince Karl Frederick besieging Metz, the remaining 2 corps of the Prussian army were determined to advance to Paris. This scared the entire French high level. The troops outside the front line of France were quickly concentrated in Paris for defense. This resulted in a large area of territory between the front line and Paris being left unguarded, which also paved the way for the Prussian army to defeat the French army with overwhelming force. Chapter 578, Greek Wedding. 1869, when the French Empire turned the Challenge Corps, which was retreating to Paris, from Reims to support the Metz fortress in the east, Napoleon III and Reims and Queen Eugenie, who was regent in Paris, did not expect that they had actually fallen into a trap that Bismarck had already prepared for them. At the same time, King William IV of the Netherlands summoned Foreign Minister Hubert van. In fact, the Third Corps led by Crown Prince Frederick of the Prussian army is still pursuing the MacMahon Corps and making a bold detour to the right. It seems that they are preparing to cooperate with the newly formed Fourth Corps to annihilate the Challenge Corps led by MacMahon and Napoleon III in Sedan, or besiege them in Sedan. William IV thought of this and knew that the time had come. He said to the Foreign Minister Hubert van, who was standing next to him, "Contact Prussia immediately and tell them that I will visit Spain, Italy, and Greece from October 7 to October 21, and attend the wedding of my brother, Crown Prince Frederick of the Kingdom of Greece, in Greece. And this half-month is the time when the Duchy of Luxembourg will borrow the passage of Prussia." William IV's words made Hubert van's eyelids jump. He felt that this was the most exciting time in his life. It seemed that the Netherlands was in his hands between peace and war, and the Netherlands was so close to war. The Kingdom of the Netherlands suddenly borrowed the Duchy of Luxembourg to let the Kingdom of Prussia pass through France. Just thinking about it made people feel excited and scared. Although Hubert van knew in advance that he had already had a confrontation with Prussia and promised Prussia. But he didn't expect that at this moment, he was still a little trembling in his heart. Looking at William IV, who looked very calm, he could no longer deny that His Majesty was indeed the most ruthless. The question is, isn't your Majesty afraid that after Prussia enters Luxembourg, Bismarck and Moltke will stop the Prussian army from leaving? In the end, Hubert van still expressed this worry. When Hubert van said this, William IV not only did not look angry, but smiled, and Hubert van, the top official of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, was frightened. He suddenly noticed the murderous aura in William IV's eyes. At that moment, Hubert van's scalp numbed. He realized one thing: is William IV really helping Prussia to deal with France? Hubert van has been the Dutch foreign minister for 8 years. Will he believe that Prussia, which occupies France, will be more friendly to the Netherlands? If he doesn't believe it, then will your Majesty not be worried? William IV glanced at Hubert van with great determination and said, "Precisely because I don't trust Prussia, for this trilateral naval exercise, I not only arranged the Strait of Calais, but also the Baltic Sea and the North Sea and Northern Holland as exercise areas. I think Bismarck will understand our difficulties. In this world, no one knows that he will understand the history of the future. At this moment, perhaps no one knows that the Netherlands has taken a different path from the history of the previous life, so no one cares that the Netherlands has obtained many opportunities for strategic changes that it did not have in the previous life." Hubert van did not know what William IV was thinking. He only felt his scalp tingling, and at the same time he exclaimed in his heart, "Europe is about to change." At 8 a.m. on October 5, 1869, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Amsterdam announced that King William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, along with his 4-year-old eldest son Prince Albert, Queen Alexandra was pregnant with her third child, and her eldest daughter Princess Anna was 2 years old, so the two would not go together, would officially depart from Amsterdam at 1 p.m. on October 5 by sea to Greece and the Mediterranean to attend the wedding of Crown Prince Frederick of Greece and Princess Louise, the 6th child and 4th princess of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. On the way, he will enter the Mediterranean on October 8 and stop by to visit the Balearic Islands, the most important island in the Mediterranean Sea of Spain. In the capital Palma, he will be grandly received by King Isabella II of Spain, and the two will have a strategic dialogue between the two royal families. After a day of rest, William IV left on the morning of October 9 and continued to the east, and finally visited Sicily in the Kingdom of Italy for a day. During this period, William IV met with King Emmanuel II of Italy in Sicily, and the two also held talks, but the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not mention the content of the talks. William IV will leave Catania, the capital of Sicily, on the morning of October 10, arrive in Athens, the capital of Greece, on the morning of October 11, and then attend the wedding of the Greek crown prince on October 15. With the announcement of William IV, the world began to squeeze out some of its attention from the Franco-Prussian War and fall on the Kingdom of Greece. On the morning of October 6, 1869, the Russian Empire announced that Alexander II would send Crown Prince Alexandrovich to participate in the marriage between the Kingdom of Greece and Britain. At the same time, as the same Orthodox Church, the Slavic Orthodox Church of the Russian Empire will interact with the Greek Orthodox Church. As soon as the news came out, it immediately aroused the concerns of Britain and Austria-Hungary in Central and Western Europe. It seems that they are unwilling to let the Russian Empire take the lead. On the same day, Karl XVI of Sweden and Christian IX of Denmark personally attended the wedding. Or maybe they don't want to see the Orthodox Church reconcile the North and the South. Queen Victoria of the British Empire went to Athens in person to attend the wedding. The French Empire, which was in the midst of a war, sent the Speaker of the French Parliament to replace Napoleon III. In Prussia, Princess Victoria and Prince William, later William II, went to Athens to attend the wedding of the royal families of various countries, but it did not slow down the Franco-Prussian War. Your Majesty, we are about to reach the site of the naval exercises of the Netherlands, Denmark and the Netherlands. In addition to Prince Albert, William IV was accompanied on this visit by Cantor, Director of the National Security Council and Coordinator of Atlantic Affairs of the Netherlands, Joseph Karls, Chief of Staff of the Netherlands Navy, Mackay Sean, Director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency, and Nicholas Pearson, Deputy Foreign Minister. The organizer of the joint military exercise of the three fleets was Jan Peter, Minister of the Navy of the Netherlands. After arriving, salute them with a naval salute. William IV followed and said, "They will be our most important weapon to pry countries to give concessions to the Netherlands. They are our heroes." On the afternoon of October 6, 1869, before the fleet accompanying William IV on a visit to Greece passed through the Strait of Calais, their fleet arrived here and conducted a joint combat exercise with a joint fleet of the exercise. Although they joined temporarily, they were carried out perfectly. This surprised all countries. Has the Dutch Navy reached this level of combat tactics? Other places don't know, but the relevant departments of the London Navy are in a mess for this, and the Royal Navy of the United Kingdom held various meetings for this. Chapter 579, The Netherlands and France break off diplomatic relations. 1869, when William IV's delegation arrived at British Gibraltar, the world was shocked by a piece of intelligence from the Franco-Prussian War. The Prussian army actually crossed from the west of the Dutch Duchy of Luxembourg and attacked the French army in Namur province. The French army was caught off guard and defeated. In the end, most of the 130,000 people in the Challenge Corps were annihilated, and the remaining 60,000 people escaped alive and were surrounded after they arrived at Sedan. After the news broke out, it shocked Europe and even the world. On October 8, 1869, Bazaine, who was in charge of the Rhine Corps in the Lorraine region, was terrified when he heard that most of the Challenge Corps supporting him was annihilated. He never expected that the Duchy of Luxembourg would become the sudden attack route of the Prussian army. It is estimated that no one in France would have thought of this possibility. Just as he was thinking about the Charleroi group, Marshal Bazaine, it's bad, we are surrounded. Marshal Bazaine's face changed drastically when he heard this. He stepped forward and pulled the person in front of him, and asked hurriedly, "What did you say?" The man said in panic, "In the morning, when our scouts went to investigate the surroundings, they found dense Prussian soldiers. Now not only the Prussians in the east, but also the Prussian troops in Alsace in the south are coming out of the camp to attack our army. In the west and north of our Rhine Corps, it is suddenly full of Prussians. Marshal, we are surrounded by the Prussian army." Besieged by the Prussian army? North and west? At this time, his staff officer could not help but say, "Marshal Bazaine, it is not clear at this time that the Challenge Corps was annihilated because of a surprise attack by the Prussian army from the Duchy of Luxembourg. And we are obviously facing the same situation now, except that the Challenge Corps faced a joint attack by the Prussian 1st and 2nd Corps, while we are now facing what may be the Prussian 3rd and 2nd Corps, or a joint action by the 3rd Corps and the 1st and 2nd Mixed Corps. He raised his head nervously and advised, "Marshal, time is running out, let's break out quickly." Yes, break out. Bazaine's talent is not outstanding among the many French generals, but he is very loyal to Napoleon III, which is why he is valued despite his lack of talent. It is true that the boss likes to use the loyalty of a talentless person more than the arrogance of a talented person. What this person does not know is that he is very timid and afraid of things. After hearing the advice of the staff officer, how could he consider anything else? At 1500 hours on the afternoon of October 8, 1869, General Bazaine, Marshal of the Rhine Corps of the French Empire, led 110,000 French troops who were surrounded in the Metz fortress in the Lorraine region to break out. Unfortunately, it was too late. The Prussian army arranged its troops in a disorderly and orderly manner. Although General Bazaine led 110,000 French troops to struggle for a long time, it failed to break out in the end. Except for less than 5,000 people who escaped, the other 70,000 people were killed and wounded. The number of French troops who surrendered with General Bazaine actually reached more than 30,000. This battle became the most deadly and worst since the war between France and Prussia. In addition to the loss of 60,000 caused by the surprise attack on the previous Charleroi Corps, the French army lost more than 130,000 people in these 3 days, which is not much different from the number of a French corps. In particular, Marshal Bazaine led 30,000 people to surrender to Prussia, which hit France hard. If the surprise attack and annihilation of the previous Charleroi Corps made Europeans change color, then now Bazaine's Rhine Corps was also surrounded and annihilated, which really shocked the world. The most surprising thing is that the reasons for these two sieges all came from one thing, that is, the Duchy of Luxembourg unexpectedly chose to support Prussia, and the duchy actually became a springboard for Prussia's surprise attack. Let France and everyone in the world have a vivid lesson about the unpredictability of war. At this time, my group didn't understand that the Duchy of Luxembourg, a neutral country, was no longer neutral. So what about the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which governs it? No one would think that this was just the intention of the Duchy of Luxembourg, but 24 hours have passed, and the Netherlands has not issued any explanation for this. It seems that the Netherlands has some intention of not caring about it. However, the French Empire will not think that the Kingdom of the Netherlands is innocent because of this. On October 9, 1869, Queen Eugénie, the regent of France, gave a speech to mobilize the whole country at the French Parliament in Paris. As one of the most powerful countries in Europe, our French Empire has never been bullied like this. The strength that was unrivaled among European countries during the reign of Napoleon I gave us the right to look down on other countries in Europe. But you see, although the French Empire still has strength, it is facing the covetous gaze of neighboring countries. Prussia intends to replace us as the hegemonic land power in Western Europe. Therefore, after tasting the sweetness after the Prussian-Danish War and the Prussian-Austrian War, it greedily stretched out its evil hands to us. It's ridiculous that many of us still think that William I of Prussia and Bismarck are gentlemen because of their hypocritical posturing, but we didn't expect that they were playing a double act. The current situation is no longer a question of whether we choose war or not, but a question of how to choose war. For the safety of Paris, our Great Majesty Napoleon III is still stationed in Reims between Paris and Sedan, with the purpose of maintaining the defense of Paris. Even His Majesty is so loyal to guarding the French Empire. It's time for everyone to do their best. Under the vivid speech of a Queen Eugénie, the French Parliament passed the Bill of General Mobilization in France proposed by her regent French cabinet government. At the same time, the French Parliament also passed a bill to withdraw 80,000 French troops from the Far East, North Vietnam, Siam and Cambodia to support the mainland, leaving only 70,000 French troops to defend the Far East. Since it was carried out in the French Parliament, all parties quickly received this intelligence through channels inside France. Although the Paris government vigorously promoted the war, the disastrous defeat of the Chalons Corps and the Rhine Corps made the French people uneasy. They were afraid that the Prussian army in eastern France would suddenly enter the hinterland of France. Although the Prussian army occupied only 5% of the French territory, war was easy to cause panic. Therefore, the discipline of the French army was greatly deteriorated. At the same time, the war between the Prussian and French armies in Sedan to encircle and annihilate 60,000 people of the Chalons Corps was also ongoing. All European countries looked there, because they knew that if the Battle of Sedan failed, it would mean that the Chalons Corps would be destroyed after the Rhine Corps, and two of the four major local regular corps of the French army, the 5th Corps was the South Vietnam Corps in the Far East, would be destroyed. It can be said that it would be very difficult for France to defend its vast territory in the face of the invasion of the Prussian army. On October 9, 1869, French Prime Minister Charles summoned Jefferson Bryn, the Dutch ambassador to France, and asked the Kingdom of the Netherlands to explain the issue of Prussia's attack on French territory from the Duchy of Luxembourg. However, the Netherlands did not respond. Therefore, France dispatched 30,000 border guards on the northern Franco-Dutch border to Tournai, the capital of Hainaut province in French Belgium. At the same time, France also stationed 10,000 French militiamen in Lille, near the Dutch-Belgian West Flanders province in the north. On October 10, French Prime Minister Charles said that in view of the bad attitude of the Netherlands, the French government announced the expulsion of all personnel from the Dutch embassy, and stated that France and the Netherlands had severed diplomatic relations. At the same time, the front of the French army on the Dutch-French border advanced 20 kilometers and arrived at the Dutch border. When the failure of the Franco-Prussian War loomed over the French people, it seemed that Paris wanted to make no profit from Prussia, so it became a better choice to attack the Netherlands. However, can France really succeed? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 580, Italian Monarchs and Ministers on Sicily. 1869, King William IV of the Netherlands and Queen Isabella II of Spain held a secret meeting in Palma, the capital of the Balearic Islands in the Mediterranean. After the meeting, Spain announced that it would send 4 warships to the north to join the Nordic Alliance fleet composed of the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden. The Dutch government announced that Spain had become a new partner of the Nordic Alliance, with the same status as the Russian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Netherlands did not directly confront France, but its actions were continuous. On October 10, 1869, the Italian royal family, which had just received William IV in Sicily, announced that Italy had become a partner of the Deep Blue Pacific Partnership, the most powerful organization in the Far East Pacific, after the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The members of the organization include the Netherlands, Spain, the United States of America, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Mexico. In addition to Spain, the organization also has 3 partner countries, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In addition, the International Court of Justice in The Hague. With these big nets, it seems that Britain is about to be isolated from the world just like France. No wonder Britain is anxious recently and sent Foreign Secretary Russell to visit Amsterdam, the capital of the Netherlands, to seek the Netherlands' support for Britain to join the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Italy, Sicily, the temporary palace of the King of Italy in Catania, the capital. Italian Prime Minister Marco Minghetti and Italian Crown Prince Umberto sit in front of King Emmanuel II of Italy. Crown Prince Umberto was surprised and said, "Perhaps 10 years ago, no one could have imagined that a medium-sized European country like the Netherlands would one day be so important to the European powers. France is now struggling, and many people in France hate the Netherlands to the core." Prime Minister Marco Minghetti also sighed. At present, the Netherlands is obviously on the side of Prussia, and Sweden and Denmark behind the Netherlands are of the same mind as the Netherlands. The most surprising thing is that Denmark is willing to put aside its prejudice and support Prussia's attack on France. This is the most puzzling. Perhaps the role of the Netherlands is far more important than we thought. Crown Prince Umberto, born in 1844, the Netherlands has threatened France by doing this. Will France ignore the threat from Prussia and insist on retaliating against the Netherlands? Emmanuel II suddenly asked, "If you were Napoleon III, how would you retaliate against the Netherlands at this time?" Crown Prince Umberto seemed to have a plan in mind, and blurted out, "The army should be mobilized and go all out to fight Prussia in the east. If possible, we can even use this as an excuse to directly occupy the Duchy of Luxembourg, which does not border the Netherlands, when we defeat Prussia. In addition, the French Navy should be sent from the sea to directly bombard the coastal areas of Belgium, and even to the north to carry out oppressive bombardment of the Netherlands. In this way, I think the Netherlands will eventually taste failure and regret." Marco, Prime Minister Minghetti and King Emmanuel II looked at each other and sighed that the Crown Prince was still a little naive. Crown Prince Umberto looked at the 2 people in front of him in confusion, and was very puzzled that the two seemed to have forgotten to comment. But he was smart and understood after a moment that his answer did not seem to be in line with their wishes. But he was still unconvinced and thought, I don't believe I would be wrong to do this. Emmanuel II suddenly asked again, if King William IV of the Netherlands is ready to ask us to pass through Italy by land, do you think you will agree? Marco Manghetti stared at Crown Prince Umberto when he heard this. The latter was shocked when he heard this and looked at Emmanuel II in disbelief. Emmanuel II said again, in order to avoid French interception, the King of the Netherlands wants to pass directly through our territory, pass through the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia, and finally return to Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Are you willing to make Italy one of the stops? Crown Prince Umberto said hesitantly, after passing through Italy, France will settle accounts later, and Italy seems to lose more than it gains. However, helping William IV when he encounters difficulties at this time seems to make the Dutch royal family owe us a favor, and the Dutch will be full of goodwill towards the Italians. This choice depends on Italy's attitude towards post-war France in the future. He followed, at the same time, it also depends on what we estimate the outcome of the war between France and Prussia to be, and then we can give William IV what kind of treatment. Marco Manghetti said at the right time, the Crown Prince's concerns are not wrong, I think other parties should be concerned about the same. However, the two's words did not dispel Emmanuel II's doubts. He always felt that things were not so simple, because this was not like the William IV in his impression. On October 11, 1869, Dutch Foreign Minister Husbert van announced the withdrawal of the embassy in France. At the same time, for safety, he called on all Dutch or Dutch people currently in the French Empire to return to the Netherlands. He called for at least leaving French territory to ensure their own safety. William IV, who was preparing to land in Athens port in Greece, was content to accept his younger brother, the Greek Crown Prince Frederick, the protagonist of this wedding, and the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Greece, Demetrius Vulgaris, who welcomed him at the port. Looking at the Greek Crown Prince Frederick, who was about the same height as himself, the blood connection of his relatives made William IV's face full of smiles, so he pulled Prince Albert off the ship. William IV and Crown Prince Frederick gave each other a solid hug without saying a word. William IV heard the words of Crown Prince Frederick. Brother, you are getting stronger and stronger. No wonder the Kingdom of the Netherlands has shocked all of Europe more than during the reign of my father. William IV still held him and said, there is no other way. It is my mission. However, the future stage of the Kingdom of Greece will also allow you to display your ambitions. After saying that, he loosened his hands, and the two looked at each other like gentlemen and laughed. From a distance, the whispers of the two brothers just now revealed a deep brotherly love. But only the two of them knew that they were talking with a hidden meaning. Uncle Frederick Prince Albert stepped forward and performed a European etiquette in a gentlemanly manner, which made Crown Prince Frederick laugh. He picked up the little guy who was only 4 years old, turned around and pointed to Prime Minister Demetrius Vulgaris next to him and introduced him to William IV, saying, this is our Greek Prime Minister. But what he didn't notice was that William IV and Demetrius Vulgaris smiled mysteriously at the same time, as if they were very familiar with each other. Chapter 581 The Queen's Helplessness. 1869, King William IV of the Netherlands, along with his eldest son, Prince Albert, and his son, held a royal dinner at the old royal palace of Greece with King William II of Greece and Queen Sophie of Greece. In addition to Prince Frederick, all members of the Nassau-Orange royal family were present, except for King Alexandra and Princess Anna, who were already pregnant in Amsterdam. As the third generation of Nassau-Orange, Prince Albert was naturally loved by King William II and Queen Sophie. After the dinner, as Frederick had guessed, King William II took King William IV to a closed-door meeting. Crown Prince Frederick saw this and felt uncomfortable. Looking at Queen Sophie, the mother of Prince Albert, who was teasing her, he seemed to feel a little lost. Mother, I'll go and prepare for the wedding in 2 days. Queen Sophie kindly pinched her grandson Prince Albert's tender face, and smiled at Prince Frederick. Go, Princess Louise will be here tomorrow, you should go and prepare, don't make any mistakes. Hearing this, Prince Frederick nodded with a smile, but after turning around, the smile on his face suddenly disappeared, replaced by a deep one. Hendrik, why do I see your figure everywhere I go? Now, even your son is making up for your previous shortcomings and snatching your mother's love for me. I really don't want to accept it. Thinking of this, he left quickly. But what he didn't know was that Prince Albert happened to see him when he turned around and his face changed. From then on, he never had a good impression of this uncle. However, the place where William I arranged for the two fathers and sons to talk was unusually quiet. Father's complexion has improved a lot recently. It seems that he is in a good mood when he is happy. William IV teased. William I rolled his eyes at him and said seriously, "You are so good. You run to the Mediterranean alone. Aren't you afraid that Napoleon I will take advantage of the risk of Prussian invasion to deal a fatal blow to the Netherlands?" William IV shook his head. "It is not your place to meddle in other people's business. My father has not been on the throne of the Netherlands for a long time, so naturally he doesn't know the situation the Netherlands is facing now. William I know that the Netherlands is facing a crisis now. I haven't seen any opportunities yet. However, it is an indisputable fact that the 30,000 French troops are threatening the Dutch-French border. There are currently 15 regular armies in the Netherlands," William IV said calmly. Seeing William IV's boastful look, William I sneered, "But these 150,000 troops, in addition to dealing with the possible revenge of France in the south, also need to face the fake and real deception from Prussia in the east. I tell you, Bismarck is not a good guy. Be careful not to be swallowed up and help others count money." William IV leaned back preparedly, as if looking for a more comfortable position, and said confidently, "Since I do this, I am naturally fully prepared." "Complete preparation?" William I sneered. "What a complete preparation? I would like to hear. What kind of complete preparation can make you so confident?" William IV was unmoved. "Father, don't you think that France is just making a show of demonstration when facing Luxembourg lending a passage to Prussia and then annexing the Dutch-French border?" Seeing William I's eyes slightly condensed, he knew that he had realized something. William IV said calmly, "Because I had prepared several plans long before I lent the road to Prussia." He said to William I excitedly, "Father, my relationship with Sweden and Denmark over the years has finally blossomed and borne fruit. This joint naval exercise among the three countries is a philosopher's stone." William I asked tentatively, "You mean, the reason why France is not really resisting the Netherlands now is because of the threat from your three countries?" William IV, "Yes, and no." "What do you mean?" William I asked unhappily. William IV said solemnly, "The population of France is as high as more than 30 million, while the current population of the Netherlands is less than 3 million. The gap of nearly 10 times makes the two countries not on the same level at all. So if France really wants to attack the Netherlands, it is not a difficult thing." William I, "That's good to know. I am very curious about your next explanation." William IV followed up, "But Napoleon I dare not act rashly, because the Netherlands has a strong navy, which is at least 40% of the French navy. France is vast and has 3 local squadrons. Compared with the Netherlands, the chances of Surin winning are greater, but the losses are also not small. In the Mediterranean, it faces Italy and Spain in the east, and the Atlantic and even the English Channel depend on the British eyes." William IV looked at William I proudly and said, "I bet right. Britain continues to marry Nassau and Orange. Napoleon I is currently cautious, which makes him more suspicious." William I said angrily, "I have always reminded you not to rely on the mercy of other countries, not on Britain. Belgium was split off during your great-grandfather's time because it was too dependent on the Russian Empire, and was ultimately powerless to recover. If a big country is wary of you just because of a marriage, then this can only prove that you are still too naive to rule for the past 10 years. Remember, my life is protected by myself, not by God. This is the main reason why I gave up the throne to you in December 1861. At the beginning, this sentence was the answer you gave me. Do I need to say it back to you now?" William IV felt a warm feeling in his heart. His father, William I, looked serious, but he was actually worried about his situation, which touched him. "So," William IV explained, "of course I have a second plan." William I's face eased, and he looked at William IV with relief. William IV then detailed his plan. William I, "Maritime exercises require close observation from countries such as Britain and France." William IV, "Yes, this way, they can feel the powerful navy of the Netherlands and be cautious." William I, "Are the underwater submarines you mentioned the same as the underwater submersibles in early Europe?" William IV, "Yes and no. Our submarines are the only submarines in the world, and they also have the weapons that can attack surface ships as mentioned earlier. Moreover, at present, just referring to the Netherlands mainland in Europe, we have more than 20 submarines, and the range is not less than 500 nautical miles. William I couldn't help asking, it is said that many European countries such as Britain and France have only developed submarines with a range of less than 50 nautical miles before, but you have more than 500 nautical miles. William IV, yes, in the Far East, more than 100 submarines of this type have been built. 100. William I was obviously shocked by the data. This data should be enough to affect Britain, intimidate France, and suppress Prussia. Naturally, William IV said. William I looked at William IV in astonishment, and asked again in disbelief, are submarines really that powerful? They can attack warships on the water with the torpedoes you developed from underwater. William IV replied again, of course. At this moment, he finally understood where William IV's confidence came from. With such powerful submarines underwater, the British Empire's surface hegemony navy no longer seemed so powerful. No wonder, his son William IV moved almost all of the Netherlands' belongings to the Far East, which is surrounded by the sea. With a navy ranked third in the world and secret submarines dominating the world, the Netherlands may soon become the next British Empire. Even Britain may be able to catch up with one and not lose. At 10 a.m. on October 13, 1869, William II and Crown Prince Frederick welcomed Queen Victoria in Athens. Karl XV, Christian IX and others arrived in Athens that afternoon. The royal family members of other countries were at least to the level of crown princes. For example, the United States also sent high-ranking officials, such as the Secretary of State, to participate in the wedding. There was no way. Who asked the daughter of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, the maritime hegemon, to marry Greece, which was not strong in Europe? But you have to know that King William II of Greece is the biological father of William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the man who got married, Prince Frederick, is the biological brother of William IV. Just based on this relationship, it is enough for all countries to give enough face to the Greek wedding. Even Prussia, although William I, Bismarck and others did not come, also sent the Crown Princess to participate. You have to know that Crown Princess Victoria is the eldest sister of Princess Louise this time. This is a family card played by Prussia. This made France more suspicious after knowing it. After all, it seems that Britain did not delay marrying the Queen's daughter to the members of the Nassau-Orange royal family during the Franco-Prussian War. When the Netherlands used the Duchy of Luxembourg to support Prussia, the British royal family continued to marry their daughters. Britain was standing on the side of Prussia in disguise. Therefore, it can be seen that after obtaining the consent of Napoleon III, Queen Eugenie, the regent, only sent the French ambassador to Greece to participate on the grounds of war. It can be said that people can't help but be surprised. But this made Queen Victoria a little helpless. Because originally, she wanted to take advantage of the meeting with William IV in Greece to ask why the Netherlands let Prussia pass through the Duchy of Luxembourg. If France could let Queen Eugenie or Napoleon III come in person, they could take advantage of their home field and take the opportunity to suppress the Netherlands in Prussia. Now it's good, I'm worrying about nothing. But this is because she didn't know the content of the conversation between William IV and his son. If she knew, she wouldn't think so. Because William IV actually counted the British Empire, not to mention that William IV actually didn't tell his father, William II of the Kingdom of Greece. In fact, he was also calculating Bismarck and others in Prussia, but he was afraid that saying it would scare William II. Chapter 582, The Spanish Queen Pretending to be Low-Key. On October 14, 1869, the Franco-Prussian War seemed to have chosen to cease fire for 2 days for this wedding, which was considered to be a face-saving decision for Britain and Greece. The quiet mountain city was glowing with scorching brilliance, and people held a grand ball under the lights of the Athens port all night. Even the actors of the Greek Royal Palace Court Theatre in Athens came to add to the fun. The gentlemanly Greek socialites and the royal families and governments of various countries showed their style, but what people were most concerned about was the final appearance of the two newlyweds who were about to get married. Of course, many men present were also concerned about the appearance of the royal families and noble ladies who appeared tonight. Who was more charming and who was more elegant? In the Greek royal palace, a dinner was being held that only guests from various countries and senior Greek nobles could attend. The whole dinner was magnificent, worthy of the once prosperous place of Eastern Rome. William IV stared at the crowd of people in the entire venue. Everyone had a gentlemanly smile on their face, but behind the smile, They were trying every means to calculate others and make plans for themselves. Birds of a feather flock together. Although William IV is the king of the Netherlands, he is also the eldest son of King William II of Greece. Today, the one getting married is his younger brother, so he is half a host and helps William II greet everyone. Around him, there are his father-in-law, King Christian IX of Denmark, King Carl XVI of Sweden, and Queen Isabella II of Spain. In addition, Nicholas Pearson and others who came with him tonight also attended the dinner as guests, but they were having a courtesy talk with their counterparts from various countries. Sweden, southern Finland plus Norway, and Denmark belonged to the Kalmar Union for nearly 130 years from 1397 to 1524. From the end of the 14th century to the beginning of the 16th century, Denmark, Sweden, southern Finland and Norway formed the Scandinavian Commonwealth. The three kingdoms shared a monarch and each country surrendered its sovereignty, but did not undermine their respective independence and divergent interests. At that time, this alliance was to deal with their common enemy, the Hanseatic League on the southern coast of the Baltic Sea, and the economic influence of the German region on Scandinavia. Because of this, although Denmark and Sweden had fought for Norway before, the natural closeness of the two countries, who once belonged to the same country, made them choose to stand together when facing things. It is said that in the last Prussian-Danish War, Sweden was preparing to lend a helping hand to Denmark, but the bourgeoisie challenged the rule of the royal family Carl XVI, so Carl XVI had to stabilize the country first and then provide support. Because of this incident, Denmark almost turned against Sweden, but this indirectly helped William IV's Netherlands to obtain the western part of Greenland from Denmark and become a member of Northern Europe. Later, it was legitimate to promote the Nordic tripartite alliance. This time, Spain can become a partner country of the Nordic alliance. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Queen Isabella II of Spain, who attended the event in a gorgeous dress, looked at the three people with peach blossoms on her face. Isabella II, who was born in 1830, was the most demanding year for women. Because of her peach blossom news in Madrid, her reputation was not very good, but fortunately she was smart and took advantage of her own advantages, which made Spain gradually develop. But she also knew that the youngest William IV in front of her was the most handsome, only 29 years old, but the one sitting next to him was his father-in-law. Although Isabella II liked mature men, Christian IX was already 51 years old this year, not much older than her, and she could eat him. However, William IV, who had a harmless smile, was made the son-in-law of Christian IX. This relationship between the two made it difficult for Isabella II to take action, and increased the feelings between the Spanish and Dutch or Danish royal families. Looking at Carl XVI sitting opposite, who was as stable as the Alps, this guy was famous for his loyalty. In 1851, he gave birth to the eldest princess of Sweden, Louisa, and in 1852, he gave birth to his eldest son, but he died young in 1854. After that, he had no children for more than 10 years. Strangely, he did not have any scandals and became a model of innocence and love in the European royal family. Facing this person who is the opposite extreme of herself, Isabella II was too lazy to touch him, because it was a pure waste of time. So, at the beginning, she went straight to the point. The main table in the middle was occupied by Queen Victoria and William II, who would become in-laws tomorrow. William IV and his family sat at a separate table nearby. So if there were four of us, as long as the noise wasn't too loud, it would be a good environment for a chat. William IV smiled and said, Spain's situation is the same as our three countries. We are surrounded by superpowers. If we don't share the same hatred and support each other, then sooner or later we will become their food. Carl XVI smiled and said, yes, the Russian Empire, France, Prussia, the British Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, etc. These behemoths have posed a threat to us. That's why Sweden formed an alliance with the Netherlands and Denmark in order to make these countries afraid to act rashly. The Swedish army, the Danish navy, the Dutch navy and army, as well as the high technology and advanced economy that are comparable to that of Britain, have laid the foundation for our alliance, but... Isabella II seemed to be unaware and asked, but what? Carl XVI looked at William IV, and seeing that the latter didn't care, he smiled and said, but the small population of our three countries is a shortcoming. Although Sweden's economy has developed well in recent years and has retained a lot of people, there are still quite a lot of people lost overseas. Currently, Sweden's population is 8 million, Denmark's is 3.5 million, and the Netherlands has a white population of 13 million. On the contrary, it is Spain, that has the largest population, reaching 21 million. If Spain can become our like-minded partner, then the population shortcomings of our three countries will be instantly made up. After making up for this shortcoming, we will no longer be afraid of other countries. Christian IX also smiled and said, yes, if Spain can make up for the shortcoming of our needed population ally. After that, he looked at William IV and said, William, what do you think? William IV's face changed slightly, but he seemed to hold back, and said with a gentleman's smile, yes, Spain is indeed a good ally, but it's a pity that Spain has no territory in Northern Europe, otherwise it can become a member of the Nordic Alliance instead of a partner country. Karl XV shook his head, seemed to hesitate for a while, then said, in fact, I was just about to tell you that Greenland was divided into East and West. The West belonged to the Netherlands, and the East belonged to Sweden. Now we in Sweden feel powerless in the governance of Greenland's territory. Therefore, we are preparing to take action on half of Greenland's border with the Netherlands, and in the Swedish parliament, many people support selling it to Spain. After saying that, William IV had a gloomy face. He and Christian IX looked at each other and both showed determination. Karl XV said to Isabella II, if Spain is willing to buy, then it will also have territory in Northern Europe. At that time, we can support Spain to become a member. At that time, even Britain and Russia will have no objections. William, right? Our William IV showed a stiff smile, nodded as if nothing had happened, and said, yes, this is a good idea. After saying that, William IV smiled to Isabella II, Spain is capable enough. I support Spain to become a new member of the Nordic Alliance. Karl XV and Christian IX breathed a sigh of relief when they heard it, and then looked at Isabella II expectantly. This Isabella II thought about it for a while. Spain's budget is not very large, I'm afraid Karl XV, £100,000 is enough Isabella II, but the area there is so large, even if it is a quarter of Greenland, it seems to be larger than the Spanish mainland Karl XV, the area is a bit large, but it is covered with ice and snow and is relatively barren. This price is enough for you and me to explain our respective nationals Isabella II finally said embarrassedly, okay, I will start a purchase policy on this when I get back. The two got a satisfactory answer, and soon Karl XV and Christian IX left together to socialize at another table. After the two left, Isabella II's face no longer had the embarrassment just now, but showed a foxy smile. She said to William IV who was sipping wine like a gentleman, William, I find that you are getting better and better at pretending. If I hadn't known the inside story, I would have been fooled by you just now. William IV glanced at Karl XV and Christian IX who were 4 or 5 tables away, and said in a casual tone, I was fooled by you too. It's a pity that you don't go to perform in a play. Many people in the world think you are a playgirl, but they don't know that they are just poor creatures in your hands. This world is really wonderful. Isabella II, don't talk about philosophy. I don't understand. I just know that you don't seem to be in a good situation. William IV straightened up and smiled indifferently. What do you mean? Isabella II, the actions of the two just now clearly show that they are unwilling to let the Netherlands become the dominant force among the three countries, and they don't want to be kidnapped by the Netherlands. Otherwise, they would not have dragged Spain into it. Am I right? William IV, so what? Isabella II, aren't you worried that the two important allies of the Netherlands in Europe will become disunited? William IV smiled slightly. You said that this is an ally of Europe. You also know the development of the Netherlands in the Far East. That is the most important territory of the Netherlands. You. Isabella II saw that William IV looked like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water, and there was really nothing she could do. Okay, I'll be frank. On the issue of the war between the French Empire and Prussia this time, you actually support Prussia. Aren't you worried about France's retaliation? William IV looked at Isabella II curiously, and only after the latter's body was frightened did he ask back, doesn't Spain also look down on France? Chapter 583, The Netherlands Down and Spain Up? William IV looked at the Spanish Queen Isabella II who was already irritated by him, and smiled. Well, I admit that I have already understood their ideas, but what they didn't expect is that Spain joining the Nordic Alliance is what I want to see most. Isabella II looked at him puzzled. Isn't the Netherlands afraid that Spain's joining will divide their power? Isabella II stared at William IV in disbelief. Don't disbelieve me, the Netherlands will be in the Far East in the future, not in Europe. Therefore, whether the Netherlands' goal is to be the leader of the alliance in the European part, I am willing to support Spain to become our leader. William IV threw out a sweet date, but it made Isabella II faint. The latter looked at William IV in disbelief. William IV, who had guessed the result long ago, said righteously, "They also said just now that Spain has a population of 21 million, which is more than 7 times that of the Netherlands. Once again, the Netherlands in Europe is willing to support Spain in maintaining the interests of the Nordic alliance. Of course, Spain wants to maintain its own leadership, so it can only gain support by helping the interests of the member countries of this team." Isabella II naturally would not object when she heard this, but she always had some doubts. Spain actually became the leader of the organization? William IV is so easy to talk to. The organization that was built with great effort was just handed over to others? But William IV did not look like a joke. She could only suppress this doubt temporarily. Of course, more importantly, she was attracted by this good news. So much so that she spent the entire dinner in a trance until the return of Karl XV and Christian IX. After the two came back, it was William IV who left to greet the guests at other tables. Therefore, only Karl XV, Christian IX, and Isabella II were left at this time. Isabella II saw Prince Alexandrovich, the Crown Prince of the Russian Empire, and Prince Umberto, the Crown Prince of Italy, talking and laughing in the distance. She turned her eyes and immediately had an idea. So she looked at the two kings at the same table with hope. Just now, His Majesty William said that he is willing to support Spain to become the 4th member of the Nordic alliance. Seeing the two of them smiling, she thought to herself, these two people are really afraid of William IV of the Netherlands, especially Christian IX. William IV is his son-in-law, but he teamed up with Charles XV to plot against him. Sure enough, it is true that brothers have to settle accounts. It's so dark. Although marriage seems to bring people closer, there is no European royal family without marriage. Paul of the Russian Empire married people all over the European continent, but during the First Crimean War, the countries where his children lived were not cannibalizing each other, or at least they watched the enemies of the Russian Empire being defeated by Britain, France, Italy and other countries and stood by. Therefore, Isabella II never thought that the marriage could last long, it was just a temporary need. Just like in 1850, when the British Princess Victoria married the Crown Prince of Prussia, everyone who thought that the British and Prussian marriage would form an alliance was greatly disappointed. Since then, Prussia has repeatedly become a thorn in the eyes of Britain and annexed the Kingdom of Hungary and Saxony supported by Britain. It can be said that it has greatly touched the nerves of Britain. Britain failed to make a profit from the marriage and was used by Prussia again and again. It can be said that it is a case of stealing a chicken but losing the rice. Perhaps William IV has already seen the cruelty of political marriage. However, thinking of the marriages between the Spanish royal family and the French royal family in other countries, it seems that the end is not much different, which is understandable. She said to the two people in front of her who seemed to think that she had successfully calculated William IV, "Your Majesty William just said that he is willing to support Spain to become the leading force of the Nordic alliance." What? Karl XV and Christian IX looked at Isabella II in astonishment. They thought they had misheard, but seeing her serious expression, how could this be a joke? No wonder William agreed so quickly. He wanted to retreat to advance? Both of them had participated in politics in their respective countries for decades. How could they not understand William IV's mind? The Netherlands retreated to Spain. Isabella II said charmingly, "His Majesty William said that his attention will be mainly on the Far East in the future. Therefore, he needs to find a reliable, powerful and reliable ally for the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden. It just so happens that the two majesties proposed something that he agrees with. So there is a saying that everything is predestined. It is predestined, but that is for you in Spain." Christian IX regretted it at this time, because he was worried that the Netherlands would become too powerful and betray Denmark's interests, so he worked with Sweden's Karl XV to win over Spain to balance the Netherlands. Now William IV, his son-in-law, chose to let Spain go. Denmark originally had a slight advantage over Sweden, but was instantly overwhelmed by Sweden and Spain, which were stronger than themselves. William made the Netherlands a spectator, and now Denmark seemed to have only a small share among the remaining 3 countries. The gain does not make up for the loss. Thinking of this, Christian IX regretted it. William IV, who was not far away, did not know the calculations of several people, but he just raised his high-footed wine glass and clinked glasses with Crown Prince Alexandrovich of Tsarist Russia. William IV smiled and said, "My cousin is a happy family. We both married princesses of the Kingdom of Denmark. It's fate." Crown Prince Umberto of Italy beside him laughed and said to William IV, "Yes, Queen Alexandra is the most beautiful queen in Europe. The most commendable thing is that she is both beautiful and talented. Now she manages the International Women's League. She is famous all over the world." He smiled at Crown Prince Alexandrovich and said, "Princess Damag, no, it should be said that Crown Princess Maria Feodorovna is said to be a lady from a noble family in the Russian Empire. She is deeply loved by His Majesty Alexander II and His Majesty the Queen. The Crown Prince and his wife are said to be very loving. Others are really envious of them." He raised his head and said, "The two of you are not only cousins, but also brothers-in-law. In addition, the Russian Empire and the Kingdom of the Netherlands have been helping each other for hundreds of years, which makes Italy very envious." William IV nodded, clinked his goblet with Crown Prince Umberto, and said, "That makes sense, but Italy is getting stronger and stronger now, and has a huge influence in the east, west, south and north of the Mediterranean. The Netherlands hopes to have a closer relationship with Italy." Crown Prince Umberto showed a hint of joy in his eyes, and affirmed, "Italy thinks so too. Of course, Italy is also willing to have a closer relationship with the Russian Empire." Sure enough, politics is everywhere at this European banquet. After William IV had been joking with the two for a while, he met the kind but extremely sharp eyes at the main table from a distance. He had seen that pair of eyes several times and was deeply impressed. Yes, it was Queen Victoria's eyes. Those eyes seemed to call him, and he nodded to her. After saying something to the person next to him, he took a step forward and walked over. He knew that there would be a verbal battle next. Chapter 584, The Two Crown Princes, Both Wanderers in the World. In the Greek royal palace in Athens, Greece. William IV finally came to the main table of William III, Queen Sophie, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, and Prince Edward. In addition to these four people, there are 6 people at this table, including Crown Prince Frederick and Princess Louise, who will be getting married tomorrow. Queen Victoria looked at William IV, who was approaching from afar, and she smiled at William III and said, "Look, under the leadership of His Majesty William IV, the Netherlands is becoming more and more powerful in Europe. Alice, it must be said that the Netherlands' status in Europe and even in the world is now soaring. I think even the Ottoman Empire is far inferior in terms of regional influence." Prince Edward curled his lips when he heard this, but in the end, looking at Queen Victoria, who was still smiling, and seeing her sharp eyes, he chose to express his dissatisfaction in his heart. Princess Louise, who was next to him, had her eyelids twitched, raised her head and elegantly took in the gazes of several people, but she didn't want to participate. However, Crown Prince Frederick was even more dissatisfied, and his face showed displeasure. Although it was fleeting, it was noticed by William II and Queen Sophie, who sighed silently in their hearts. However, what they did not realize was that Queen Victoria and others on the opposite side also saw this. Crown Prince Frederick seemed to say casually, "The connections of the Nassau-Orange family have now become my brother's greatest reliance, but there is nothing we can do. After all, Greece is not originally owned by our Nassau-Orange family." William II glared at him and opened his mouth to criticize him, but the people sitting opposite him were his second son's mother-in-law, eldest brother-in-law and his wife. If that were the case, it would be difficult for him to step down, not to mention that his wife Queen Sophie had already shaken her head at him, and he only had his second son by his side, so it would be difficult to scold him and embarrass him. So he had to change the subject and said, "The Franco-Prussian War is currently raging. I wonder what the British Empire thinks the two principalities will stop when the war reaches that level." Speaking of this, he couldn't help but think of his eldest son William IV's solemn promise to him that the Netherlands was fully prepared, especially the means to guard against Britain. Could submarines really make Queen Victoria, who had been powerful in Europe for 30 years, choose to turn a blind eye to the Netherlands? To this day, he is still uneasy about this. It must be said that what the second son said just now was absolutely correct. That is, for the Nassau-Orange family, the Netherlands is the foundation of their family, and the others are just expanded territories. It must be said that his question also attracted several people at the same table. Crown Prince Edward added, "Currently, Prussia has the upper hand. Namur province and Lorraine have all been occupied by Prussia. The East is already in danger. It is said that Napoleon III can no longer stay in Reims and is preparing to return to Paris to hold on. It is shocking to think that the great French Empire was occupied by Prussia so quickly. Crown Prince Frederick smiled at Crown Prince Edward in a flattering way. Seeing the latter's kind response, he agreed, "That's right. However, if my brother hadn't inexplicably lent the Duchy of Luxembourg to Prussia, Prussia wouldn't have been able to take over so much French territory so easily at this time." He turned to William II and said, "Father, I think that in this matter, although your brother is the King of the Netherlands, the Duchy of Luxembourg belongs to our Nassau-Orange family and should not be sacrificed by your brother. After all, the wrath of France is something the Nassau-Orange family cannot bear." Yes, Crown Prince Edward felt more and more that Prince Frederick, who would be his brother-in-law tomorrow, was very much to his taste, and he secretly thanked God that Louise married him instead of that guy William IV. So he could not hide his inner joy, and said with a smile but adding insult to injury, "On this point, I also think that His Majesty William IV could have chosen to be more neutral, instead of intervening in the Franco-Prussian War. Those two are big countries, and the size of the Netherlands cannot be compared with them. If we wait for the Franco-Prussian truce, France's revenge may be difficult to bear." As if encouraged, ignoring William II, who had a slightly stiff smile on his face, and ignoring his mother's frequent reminders, Crown Prince Frederick complained, "If my father and I had not come to Greece and the Duchy of Luxembourg was still in our hands, then there would never have been such a turmoil. If we have to blame anyone, it's only because my brother Hendrik was too self-righteous and eager to choose sides after becoming the King of the Netherlands, and he didn't even know he was on the wrong side." When he finally said this sentence that he had been holding back for a long time, he looked up at everyone to see their expressions, but found that they all looked at him with strange expressions. Is there something wrong with what he said? Suddenly, he found that the eyes of his wife Princess Louise and Crown Prince Edward, who were opposite him and were getting married tomorrow, did not seem to be on him, because their eyes were not looking straight at him, but looking up. Then, he saw William II and his mother Queen Sophie, who were on the side next to him, also staring at his back at a 45-degree angle. Is there someone behind him? This was his first thought. He was not a fool. On the contrary, he was very smart. Because of his intelligence, he chose to be very low-key when he was in the Netherlands before, and also when he was in the Duchy of Luxembourg. It was not until his father William II became the King of Greece and he became the Crown Prince that he thought the overall situation had been decided. He then vented his anger and slandered his brother Hendrik, William IV, who had always been the object of jealousy. With his marriage to Queen Victoria of the British royal family, the superpower, William IV, who was only married to the small Danish royal family, felt superior. Greece's geographical location is not worse than that of the Netherlands, and it is even better. Even among the big countries, there are only the Ottoman Empire suppressed by Britain and the Austro-Hungarian Empire defeated by Prussia. After he becomes the King of Greece, he will be able to govern Greece better than the Netherlands ruled by Hendrik. Just as he finished thinking, he was about to turn around to see who it was. It's a good idea, but your overall view is still not good enough. You need more strength. Father, I think it would be better to let him visit various regions in Greece from next year. Of course, it would be best to visit more countries to understand the political order of each country, so as not to speak without thinking and make a fool of himself. You are. Hearing this, Crown Prince Frederick turned around quickly and wanted to refute this person, but when that face appeared in front of him, he was a little scared because he had been afraid of William IV since he was a child. William IV stared at him majestically and asked, "What? What I said is wrong." Chapter 585, A Good Time to Slaughter France. Kingdom of the Netherlands, Amsterdam. Now Prussia, with the help of the Duchy of Luxembourg of the Dutch royal family, has won battles in France one after another, which has shocked all countries about the role of the Netherlands. Not to mention foreign countries, even the Netherlands has been confused and has completed its position. Now the Netherlands is full of tension. Especially with the news brought back by the Dutch who came back from doing business in the French border in Brussels, Belgium. France has deployed more than 50,000 troops on the border between the Netherlands and France, and seems to intend to retaliate against the Netherlands for helping Prussia invade France. Various rumors are spreading. Now the national alert in the Netherlands has entered the highest level, with more than 180,000 regular army and 300,000 temporary conscript army on standby. There are 60,000 regular troops and 60,000 temporary troops deployed in the south of the Netherlands, of which 5,000 regular troops and 10,000 conscripts are deployed in Maldem, the capital of West Flanders province. 5,000 regular troops and 10,000 conscripts are deployed in Ghent, the capital of East Flanders province, Belgium, which has just returned to the Netherlands. Habild, the capital of Limburg province, also has 5,000 regular troops and 10,000 conscripts. The southern headquarters, the capital of Antwerp province, is the military headquarters of the southern Netherlands, with the remaining 45,000 regular troops and 30,000 conscripts deployed. 30,000 regular troops and 60,000 conscripts, a total of 90,000 people, are deployed in Gelderland province, close to the east of Prussia. Assen, the capital of Drenthe province in the north, is deployed with 30,000 regular troops and 60,000 conscripts to guard against Prussia. The remaining 60,000 regular troops and 120,000 conscripts are placed on the western coast. In particular, it guards major cities such as Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague, with its headquarters in Amsterdam, of which Rotterdam is deployed with 10,000 regular troops and 20,000 conscripts, and The Hague has 10,000 regular troops and 20,000 conscripts. Of the remaining 40,000 regular troops and 80,000 conscripts in Amsterdam, 30,000 regular troops and 60,000 are stationed outside Amsterdam, and the remaining 10,000 regular troops and 20,000 conscripts are deployed in Utrecht, the capital of Utrecht province, as mobile support forces in the east, west, south and north. Amsterdam, the capital of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, has now become the best place for Dutch nobles and capitalists to get information. In the center of Amsterdam, there is a huge palace that is relatively large compared to the surrounding houses. This palace covers a large area. Standing at the top, you can overlook the surrounding area for several kilometers. This is the most powerful place in the Kingdom of the Netherlands today. At this moment, at the top of this extremely heavily guarded palace, a woman dressed in gorgeous Dutch royal attire stood with her hands behind her back with a big belly. Although the woman was 4 months pregnant, her figure was still extremely enchanting. Even if she wore a slightly loose dress for her convenience as a pregnant woman, it was still difficult to cover up the heart-pounding curve of her forehead. In the dark wild sky, the bright moonlight shines down, illuminating the beautiful cheeks that make people hold their breath. This beauty gives people a sense of enchantment at first sight. The red lips are slightly pursed, and the arc is enchanting. However, the beautiful eyebrows are slightly frowned, with a sense of majesty from being in a high position for a long time. Your Majesty, Prime Minister Thorbecke wants to see you. At this time, a woman dressed in an elegant long dress, who looks less than 24 or 25 years old, walked up from the bottom of the palace. She is the deputy chief steward of the palace and also her personal housekeeper. Her name is Lucy. Lucy has her lovely and delicate oval face, like a beautiful porcelain doll. The words just now were said by her, tender and cold. Let him come up. Queen Alexandra turned around and frowned at the slightly respectful Lucy in front of her. Lucy was the personal housekeeper appointed by William IV after she married from Denmark to the Netherlands. Lucy is a person who knows how to serve others and knows how to advance and retreat. She is also very useful. It is precisely because of her usefulness that Queen Alexandra feels alert. Lucy's appearance was amazing when she first saw her. Now 10 years have passed. She was young but not beautiful at the time, but she has become more mature. In the past 10 years, she has found out very clearly that Lucy seems to be devoted to her husband William IV. Well, she wants him to live alone for the rest of his life. This kind of woman can be said to be a living bomb. Who knows if she will do something bad to her in order to get to the throne that day. Of course, the relationship between the two is now handled very well, but it is just a long-term worry. Of course, as the most confident Queen Alexandra in the European royal family, she does not really take her seriously. It's just a vigilance. After all, it's necessary to be on guard against others. While she was thinking, Prime Minister Thorbecke appeared in front of Queen Alexandra with a slightly bent waist. Greetings, Your Majesty. Lucy, please step aside. Yes, Your Majesty. Although Lucy was puzzled, she heard this, but Queen Alexandra's majesty was growing day by day. She did not want to offend her, so she quickly stepped aside. After Lucy left, Prime Minister Thorbecke said respectfully, Your Majesty, Prussia currently has only 50,000 troops stationed in the upper reaches of the Rhine River on the Dutch border, and there will not be much change at present. The Ems River bordering our north even had 60,000 troops stationed there because of the Franco-Prussian War, and now 20,000 have been transferred south to the battlefield of the Franco-Prussian War. Humph, Queen Alexandra snorted coldly, this is just to reassure us. Bismarck is a very cunning man, and we must be on guard against him. His Majesty William also said that the 180,000 troops defending Prussia should not be changed to prevent Prussia from exploding on both sides. Thorbecke nodded in agreement. Looking at Queen Alexandra, who had royal blood, the originally immature girl had turned out to be the one who is now directing the world. He had to sigh that William IV was really good at cultivating people. Although France has deployed troops there, it has not taken any action. Prime Minister Charles even sent people through secret channels to ask the Netherlands not to use Luxembourg to consolidate to Prussia, and is willing to give the West Liege province and the French Luxembourg province to the Netherlands with the consent of the Netherlands. Humph, Queen Alexandra said again indifferently, we fought hard to get it from Belgium, but it was snatched by Prussia. Now it is said to be transferred to the Netherlands. Isn't this a trick? Give it to the Netherlands? Then let the Netherlands and Prussia reason? It's really a low-level provocation. Tell them that the Netherlands is willing to be a peacemaker to help them negotiate with Prussia, but the Netherlands wants France's Mauritius Islands in the Indian Ocean, and also wants to give us the Kerguelen Islands in the South Indian Ocean. 2 hours later. Paris, the only inland northern part of France, although its city size is smaller than London, it is difficult for other cities in Europe to match. It can be said that it is the third largest city in Europe, and no one competes with it for the second place. Its economy is also one of the most developed in Europe, because it is the political, economic and cultural hub of the French Empire, and also the cultural symbol of the French Empire, so it is the most important city in France. The huge meeting hall of the Royal Palace was filled with powerful people in the empire's politics and military. There were also many influential representatives of aristocratic forces. They sat on the left and right sides of the hall. It's absurd. Queen Alexandra of the Kingdom of the Netherlands is asking for too much? She is going too far. At the first seat in the meeting hall, when Queen Eugenie finished reading the telegram, she slapped the table next to her. The next moment, everyone in the entire meeting hall chose to remain silent. This shows how powerful Queen Eugenie is. The entire meeting hall was suddenly silent. People on both sides trembled, and cold sweat broke out on their backs. Napoleon III is still defending in Reims. Prime Minister Charles is under Queen Eugenie's command. So who in France dares to touch his reverse scale rashly? Isn't that asking for trouble? After the hall was silent for about a minute, Foreign Minister Edmund, who was sitting on the right side of the hall, spoke up. William IV actually let Queen Alexandra be regent. Obviously, he had anticipated this would happen. This proves that the Netherlands was well prepared. Then, William IV went to Greece to attend the wedding at this time to avoid the sensitive opportunity of lending the Duchy of Luxembourg to the Kingdom of Prussia. This was a long-planned plan. Queen Eugenie stared at him and asked, are you saying that William IV of the Netherlands had already guessed that we would look for them? So he chose to leave at this time, leaving us with no one to complain to? Also, the Netherlands has taken advantage of us and wants us to give in to them. Although it was embarrassing to say it, Edmund still nodded and said, yes, William IV is extremely cunning. He has won many conflicts over the years, and his unexpected tricks are hard to guard against. Just like this time when everyone chose to avoid the Franco-Prussian War, they unexpectedly chose to wade into this muddy water. I think many people think that he is a fool and did a foolish thing, but if you look back at his past history, as long as you are familiar with it, you will know that he will not make such a decision so easily. I think not only us, but also Berlin will not understand why the Netherlands is doing this. Foreign Minister Edmund looked up at the beautiful Queen Eugenie on the throne and said, in fact, we might as well agree to it, because as long as we get the Netherlands' temporary non-support for Prussia, then Prussia's momentum will decline. After our war with Prussia stops and France recovers, we can do it a second time as Britain did when it separated Belgium from the Netherlands, and become the second Britain to hurt the Netherlands. Edmund's loud proposal made everyone present suddenly brighten up, even Queen Eugenie was no exception. Yes, France is currently facing a powerful enemy Prussia. What if the Netherlands picks up the spoils? Sooner or later, it will be vomited back to France. In the end, the French Empire agreed to Queen Alexandra's request with a nod of Queen Eugenie, and chose to send people to Amsterdam to negotiate and sign the terms of the treaty on October 15, 1869. at a dinner hosted by the Greek royal palace in Athens, Greece. The women's competition was fruitless. When Princess Louise and Crown Prince Frederick held a meeting to show their faces, it was the climax of the whole banquet. The European royal family members present at today's banquet had to admit that Princess Louise from the UK, who was about to become the Crown Princess of Greece, had the impression of being smart, exquisite, and charming, with a unique charm of Londoners. And Crown Princess Victoria from the Kingdom of Prussia is a natural beauty with a natural and fresh gesture. Although many people like the high-end and elegant Princess Victoria, it has to be said that more people are attracted to Princess Louise. Many people privately praise Princess Louise for her elegant manners and extraordinary temperament. Chapter 586, Dinner Attack from the Greek Palace. In the Greek Palace, the feast of the Greek royal family tonight made him appreciate once again the secret of Europe as the most prosperous place in the world in the 18th and 19th centuries. It also made him realize the essence of the European upper class. William IV looked at Princess Louise obscurely, and both of them tacitly turned their eyes away from each other. William IV was very satisfied with Princess Louise. This woman who was about to become his sister-in-law was ambitious enough. Even Queen Victoria, the King of Britain, might not know how much her fourth daughter had betrayed Britain behind her back over the years. Almost everyone was deceived by her appearance, which shows how clever her methods were. She expressed condolences to herself, William II and Queen Sophie, who were his future father-in-law at the time, for the death of William IV's grandmother, Queen Mother Anna. Her attitude was sincere and her tone was true. This deeply touched William II and Queen Sophie, who were originally discussing the marriage between him and Frederick and had some doubts about it, and were moved. Finally, under the promotion of William IV, the marriage was successfully settled. The arrival of William IV made everyone's eyes focus on him. Perhaps this is how the world is. When you think you are the most important person in the world and think that the focus of the world revolves around you, but when others become more likely to attract the focus than you, then jealousy will come. Now, facing William IV, who has been arranged to sit below Queen Sophie and before him, Crown Prince Frederick is very dissatisfied, because he feels that everyone at the table, including Princess Louise, who will become his wife tomorrow and is still his fiancée, dodged quickly, but he still discovered her flash of joy just now. This made him very jealous. The Netherlands and Luxembourg were given to him. He was enjoying the pampering of the public after hiding in Greece. He came here again, as if to show off his power, which made him lose focus. Even Princess Louise, who would become his wife tomorrow, seemed to be attracted by him. William IV. Hendrik. It's mine. I won't give it up easily. I won't be a supporting role on the stage and revolve around you. I should live like a protagonist. Thinking of this, facing William IV who had just questioned him, he secretly looked at his future brother-in-law, Crown Prince Edward, and saw that he really hated William IV because of Princess Alexandra as the legend said. He secretly made plans in his heart. So he hit back, experience is what I should do. I'm just about to ask my father for permission to train in the Greek military and do my part as a crown prince for the Kingdom of Greece. However, our Greek territory is in the Mediterranean, unlike the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which can compete with other powerful countries in the Far East. Brother, you've come all the way to Athens. It must have been very dangerous, right? He looked at his future mother-in-law, Queen Victoria, like a gentleman, then sighed to William IV. The Franco-Prussian War is very fierce right now. It's unthinkable for the Netherlands to intervene in it at this time. I heard that many people at the banquet just now said that the Netherlands' approach was unwise. I was affected by it because I heard so much. I just expressed their thoughts to reflect the attitudes of European countries to my father. If my brother is absolutely wrong, I am willing to clarify the Netherlands' position. After all, we are brothers. After that, he smiled sincerely at William IV. Throughout the whole process, William III did not stop it. He seemed to be a bystander, a loving father watching his two biological sons quarreling because of their different positions. Perhaps in his opinion, this quarrel is beneficial and harmless. Moreover, judging from Frederick's reaction just now, he seems to be quite smart. Perhaps following the eldest son Hendrik, William IV, who has ruled the Netherlands for 10 years, can accelerate his growth. After hearing this, Princess Louise looked at her husband after tomorrow. Judging from what she said just now, Crown Prince Frederick is definitely not stupid. Perhaps life in the Greek royal palace will be more interesting in the future. As for worrying, she didn't, because she was very confident in herself. Queen Victoria also looked at her future son-in-law unexpectedly. From just now to now, the Queen has been listening quietly, with a smile of royal etiquette on her face. No one knows what she is thinking. Perhaps, as many people in the distance guessed, she was sizing up her future son-in-law, but is it really the case? These people are so calm, but some people will not hold back their hearts. It was rare for Crown Prince Edward to have an opportunity to add insult to injury, so he would not let it go. So he stepped forward to assist. Crown Prince Frederick is right, Your Majesty William IV. The current European public opinion is very unfavorable to the Netherlands, and France is said to have conducted a poll, and more than 90% of the French believe that the Netherlands should be retaliated. In this case, France may do something that is difficult to describe with common sense to the Netherlands. Just now, Crown Prince Frederick's concern for Your Majesty's own safety is not unreasonable. Be careful that someone in France attacks Your Majesty to vent. If it fails, it's okay. If it succeeds, then the Netherlands may face an unprecedented crisis. At that time, the Dutch royal family will only have Prince Albert who will follow His Majesty out. If something unexpected really happens, it will be a serious blow to the Nassau-Orange family, which is already small in number. I think this is also what His Majesty William II and Her Majesty Queen Sophie do not want to see. In order to avoid worrying about his parents, Crown Prince Frederick spoke out on behalf of the two elders at this time, but it is also a rare act of filial piety that a son should have. Papa William IV applauded, and said happily to his father William III at the top, "It seems that Frederick has grown a lot recently, father and mother. In this way, I am relieved about the future rule of Greece." After that, he looked at Crown Prince Edward, and then said in the tone of an elder, "France is the most gentlemanly country in Europe. I think Paris will be more gentlemanly and will not do anything to hurt the Netherlands. Your Highness the Crown Prince should worry about Britain instead of me. Only in this way can you be worthy of the status of the Crown Prince of the British Empire. What I mean is that, at present, the Crown Prince has not made the achievements that he should have for this position above everyone else in the UK. Be careful that someone in the UK is dissatisfied with you." After that, without waiting for the blushing Crown Prince Edward to refute, William IV met Queen Victoria's scrutinizing gaze. Princess Louise secretly said, "That's so beautiful. I wanted to say it when I was in London." Crown Prince Frederick was stunned to see William IV verbally slamming Prince Edward in front of his mother, Queen Victoria. He felt short of breath. He looked at Queen Victoria with some expectation, hoping that the Queen would stand up to defend her son's dignity. William II was also dissatisfied. "You can hide him if you want, but why do you do it in front of the Queen of the British Empire, your mother? Be careful that he will go crazy." At this time, even Princess Sophie looked at William IV with acclaim. Compared with the eldest son, mothers all over the world always like their youngest son the most. It has been passed down since ancient times and is consistent all over the world. The 50-year-old Queen Victoria gradually degenerated the charm that a charming woman should have. It must be said that Queen Victoria, who gave birth to 9 children, has lost her figure even if she has maintained it in the court for these years. What's more, with the death of her husband Prince Albert in 1862, she had no goal to dress up or dress for anyone. Therefore, she is no longer beautiful, but she has become more and more majestic during her 30 years as a queen. Every move she made was full of power, which made people cautious. The Queen took a deep breath and the whole table quieted down. It seemed that everyone was preparing to listen to the Bible. Both Crown Prince Edward and Crown Prince Frederick had a little more expectation. "Your Majesty William II, it seems that there is a reason why the Netherlands has developed so fast. Look at what His Majesty William IV said just now. It is well organized and sharp. Look at Edward and Frederick. They are full of sharpness but lack the foundation. They show that they are ambitious but incompetent. This is really wrong. Edward, do you really want to fight against His Majesty William IV and go all the way to the end?" Every word of Queen Victoria was deafening to the people present. Even Princess Louise, who knew Queen Victoria best, was shocked by her words at this moment. Crown Prince Edward and Crown Prince Frederick changed from disappointment to panic. From what the Queen said just now, it is obvious that the two of them did not have a positive impression in the Queen's mind. At least it didn't reach the level that Crown Prince Frederick himself wanted to be worthy of the Queen's support of British investment resources to fight against William IV in the fight for the power of the Nassau-Orange family. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Not enough, he was better off than Crown Prince Edward, who ruthlessly refuted in front of everyone, which showed how bad the relationship between the Queen and the Crown Prince, the mother and son of the British royal family, had reached. Thinking of this, the desire to rely on Britain to fight against William IV was immediately suppressed. Crown Prince Edward seemed to see that many people were looking at him, and immediately showed a shame on his face, but he understood that now was not the time for him to refute, otherwise things would only get worse, and he remembered Disraeli's previous reminder. So he pretended to beg for mercy and said, "My mother warned me, but it was my fault." After that, he kindly said to William IV, "I'm sorry, I was just misled just now." Edward's apology made several people's eyes fall on William IV again. William IV looked at this scene, shook his head, and said nonchalantly, "In fact, the Crown Prince's concerns are not wrong. After all, we should be on guard against others. However, my confidence comes from the fact that I have already made full preparations. But I still thank you for your concern." The people at the tables not far away pretended to chat casually, but they all pricked up their ears to listen to the conversation. They were also nervous just now, but after facing Queen Victoria's suppression, they thought that a storm seemed to have passed. But is it really like this? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 587 Bismarck. Now is not the time to take over the Netherlands. In the large and magnificent palace of the Berlin Palace, the Kingdom of Prussia, an old man dressed in the gorgeous Prussian royal attire was slowly reading the latest intelligence in his hand. Although he was old, he had a heroic look on his face. It can be seen that he must have been an extremely handsome man when he was young, and he exuded a majestic temperament. This man was King William I of the Kingdom of Prussia. At this time, he was sitting behind the desk, standing on the memorials presented by various places. Unlike the usual kindness when he appeared in public, his eyes now showed a compelling look, as if he was choosing someone to bite. Opposite him was Bismarck, the iron-blooded Prime Minister of Europe who always maintained this seriousness. Both of them showed a trace of fatigue. The two of them did not work quietly for long. The Kingdom of the Netherlands seems to be very wary of us. After a moment, William I was holding the latest intelligence from the Netherlands. The first page of the letter Dutch army deployment was written on it. Bismarck nodded and said, "William IV never trusts anyone. In order to deal with Britain and prevent us from plundering colonial territories in Africa, he proposed the formation of the Franco-Prussian-Dutch alliance. In the end, Britain was helpless and could only follow the trend to grab territories in Africa. We thought the three-nation alliance would last for a long time, but we did not expect that the agreement would be abolished after only 5 years as stipulated in the agreement, and it was the Netherlands that took the lead in abolishing it. After that, the Allies became enemies, and the Netherlands won over other countries to sanction the former French Empire together, and it was ruthless. Your Majesty, have you even noticed that although we have already planned to go to war with France, it seems that the Netherlands has always been able to anticipate our steps along the way and then make various corresponding deployments. Therefore, it is understandable that such a cautious William IV is on guard against us. This is even the real him." William I sighed. "The location of the Netherlands is more important to us than Denmark. The Netherlands is the biggest wall to prevent us from entering the Atlantic Ocean. If the Netherlands belonged to Prussia, how could we attack Denmark? The coastline occupied by the Netherlands is twice as long as our coastline in the Atlantic Ocean, plus the Belgian part. If it belongs to Prussia, then when we face the British Empire in the future, we will have enough military ports to fight against it. Prussia's current rise is unstoppable. In the future, it will definitely compete with the British Empire at sea and on various issues in Europe. At present, the Netherlands has already confronted Britain in the Indian Ocean. Although there has been no real fighting, a series of competitions have been carried out for this. This precedent has to make us wary and warn us that we must take precautions early. Prime Minister, if Prussia does not make more preparations, the limitations we will face in the future will be difficult to remove. Prussia is his life's work. He can expand it a little bit, which is why he agreed to Bismarck, who is very persistent in expanding territory, to reuse it. It can be said that the two are soldiers in the trenches, but one is charging and the other is a commander in the rear." Bismarck looked at his pocket watch and smiled. The world must be shocked that the Netherlands and the Duchy of Luxembourg lent us a passage. At this time, the Netherlands is already in a state of panic. I think Britain will definitely keep an eye on the Netherlands' next move, and the French Empire will hate the Netherlands even more. No matter whether it is the nobles or the lower classes of France, they will all become hostile to the Netherlands. Your Majesty, if we want to obtain the Netherlands' large tracts of fertile territory and long Atlantic coastline, we need to do more things. We must make the Netherlands gradually lower its defenses against us, make the Netherlands' homeland defenses empty, make the countries around the Netherlands hostile to the Netherlands, and even make the Netherlands fight with them. At that time, it will be easy for us to take the Netherlands, reducing unnecessary losses, and it will also allow us to face less international condemnation. Why not do it? William I nodded and said, we can't be impatient with the Netherlands. However, William IV has now gone to the Kingdom of Greece to participate in the marriage between Greece and Britain, but he has handed the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Queen Alexandra of the Netherlands, the regent of Princess Alexandra from Denmark. I admire William IV's courage. This person is a stroke of genius. Bismarck also exclaimed, France wants to investigate the matter of Luxembourg lending to us. William IV had already gone to the Greek land before that happened, and he had already calculated that he was far away from France. At that time, I felt that his actions were wonderful. After that, Alexandra's regency made the female regent of Queen Eugenie in France, which was also in France, bring soft power to the extreme. It seems that the Netherlands is showing weakness to France, but it seems that the Netherlands and France are competing against each other in a female regent. In short, the position of the Netherlands has become more vague. France does not seem to be willing to immediately establish a confrontation with the Netherlands at this time, but it has sent troops there to threaten or defend. I have to say that William IV's successive actions have made the water even more turbid and difficult to see clearly. Even I am now blurred by his actions, and my grasp of the situation is no longer as stable as before. It is difficult to describe the atmosphere. Bismarck had only felt it from the deceased former Prime Minister Metternich of the Austrian Empire before. Even the former Prime Minister of the British Empire, Viscount Palmerston, who had passed away before, did not feel as strong as William IV, at least not as threatening to him. It was precisely because of this that he had launched a war against Denmark and the Austrian Empire under the warning of Viscount Palmerston after the successful layout, because at that time, he had already realized that he was not inferior to the old fox Viscount Palmerston in diplomatic and political ability. And William IV's unpredictable approach made him even more worried. William knew that Bismarck had never spoken to him, so he knew that this was Bismarck confessing to him that he had no chance of winning against the Netherlands. So he cleverly changed the subject and said, the Netherlands currently has a population of less than 3 million in mainland Europe. Judging from William IV's intention, it has become a foregone conclusion to focus on the Far East and neglect mainland Europe. We can put aside the threat of the Netherlands, just like this time. As long as the Netherlands is sensible enough to lend a passage to Prussia, we can tolerate the existence of the Netherlands. What's more, it is a wall of ours, and in fact, it is also a door closed to the outside world, which can isolate the infiltration of British forces. At present, this is the best outcome as we have not taken over the Netherlands. Bismarck nodded and smiled. Napoleon III has been in Reims long enough. It's time for us to attack. I think we should start from October 16, 1869, the first day after the Greek wedding. William I laughed. That's it, I agree. Chapter 588. The Queen of the Netherlands conquered European ladies. It was 9 o'clock in the evening at the Greek royal palace. The scene returned to the banquet at the Greek royal palace. The provocation of the two crown princes was just a small episode in front of the rulers who controlled the power of a country, such as William IV, William II and Queen Victoria. However, these small details that happened in front of us can tell a lot. This Dutch king is about the same age as his eldest son, but his control over the current situation is very subtle. Queen Victoria became more and more wary of William IV. So after suppressing Crown Prince Edward, she looked at William IV with a sharp gaze. Napoleon III is not a good person. I don't think France will easily suffer this loss. The Netherlands may need to be prepared for this. It seems to be well-intentioned, but in fact it seems to be throwing out an olive branch, intending to ask the Netherlands to stand by Britain. King William III of Greece was somewhat moved. He agreed to marry Britain in order to find a reliable European power as a backer for Greece. It is currently difficult for the Netherlands to help Greece. The Ottoman Empire has always been resentful of the fact that Greece broke away from the control of the Ottoman Empire with the support of the three countries of Britain, Russia and Austria. Therefore, the threat to Greece from the Ottoman Empire is real. If Greece gets closer to Britain, it will be easier for the Netherlands to get closer to Britain. However, what greeted him was William IV shaking his head and smiling bitterly. Obviously, his father knew that William IV had rejected Queen Victoria's kindness. Sure enough, William IV said, "Prussia has a good relationship with us. I think Queen Eugenie is a smart person. France can't even beat Prussia at present. If the Netherlands is added, then they will be more difficult. Your Majesty, if you were Queen Eugenie, the regent of France, would you choose to go to war with the Netherlands at this time?" In other words, I think she knows how to make a choice. Queen Victoria secretly said, "Yes, France is currently facing the pressure of the Prussian army, and it is difficult to win. Will they provoke the Netherlands again? Isn't this sick?" There is a saying in the Far East that a gentleman's revenge is never too late. If it were her, she would appease the Netherlands first, so that she could settle accounts with the Netherlands after a peaceful truce with Prussia. The others were not stupid, and they all thought of this problem. They immediately had different thoughts about the fact that the Netherlands might have escaped the disaster because of France's current powerlessness. Suddenly, she thought of a question and couldn't help but say, "No, Napoleon III is a very face-conscious person, just like Napoleon I in the past. Will he be willing to temporarily appease the Netherlands?" Yes, the others thought that Napoleon III was famous for his violent temper and his love of face. The Netherlands had just set a trick on France. With Napoleon II's character, it seemed difficult for him to compromise, whether for the sake of face or to maintain his ruling position in front of the people. Crown Prince Edward and Crown Prince Frederick subconsciously rekindled a glimmer of hope that had just been extinguished. They wanted France to take a severe revenge on William IV's Netherlands, so that they could extinguish the hatred in their hearts. But unfortunately, William IV disappointed them again. The Queen has said that it was Napoleon III. At present, it seems that the person who is in charge of Paris is not him but Queen Eugenie. Of course, there is also Queen Eugenie and Prime Minister Ben Charles. William IV hinted, "I think people in Paris understand the value of peace better than those on the front line." William III was relieved immediately, and Queen Victoria lowered her eyes heavily, then quickly raised them. Her eyes were shining. She looked around at the other people. William II and Queen Sophie seemed to be much more relaxed. Edward and Frederick were well concealed. But who was she? How could she not see their inner disappointment and unwillingness? Daughter Louise was calm, but the trembling of her eyelashes under her eyelids showed that she was not calm inside. Finally, her eyes fell on William IV. "It's good to be young, brave and resourceful," she praised, and then said to William II, "With him governing the Netherlands, you can be worry-free. I'm really envious." It was a double entendre. William II smiled. "Yes, at present my energy is completely focused on Greece. As for him." William II showed a doting look at William IV. "I have completely let go for many years. He has been the king of the Netherlands since December 1861. William IV smiled but said nothing. However, Queen Victoria did not intend to let him go. The current regent of the Netherlands is Queen Alexandra. William IV is really confident in her. She said to William II and Queen Sophie, "You have been married since March 10, 1863. In the past 6 years, you have had a boy and a girl, and you are almost 5 months pregnant with your third child. You two are so lucky to have such a capable and fertile daughter-in-law." Queen Sophie's face changed slightly, and the British Crown Prince Edward was not much better. The eldest son gave his daughter-in-law the management of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which made her, the mother-in-law, pale in comparison. Crown Prince Edward was naturally very happy that the person he loved was trusted by William IV. Obviously, his mother, Queen Victoria, was warning him, "Look at the deep love between the couple, and the power of state governance can be easily transferred like this. What can you compare with them?" However, what Queen Victoria did not realize was that Princess Louise, who was next to her, had a flash of fiery eyes, and seemed unmoved, but William IV happened to see it and smiled in his heart. Sure enough, she was still herself, and the second son of power was enough to make people tempted. Queen Alexandra is famous for her beauty and fashion, and has created many famous fashion luxury brands in Europe. In the past 7 years, a large number of fashion luxury brands have been established in the Netherlands and Europe, the Far East and even the Americas. As far as I know, They are all current brands that have gradually developed under the name of Alexandra. The major Dutch consortiums control and support the industry, and the industry is gradually taking shape. Therefore, there are quite a few fashion brands that were once helped by Queen Alexandra. Queen Victoria praised. Currently, European royal family members and noble women go out with luxury goods from major Dutch brands. It can be said that a queen is used to this extent by His Majesty. It is a miracle. In London, many people are studying the Dutch economic model of easily establishing an industry and learning from the Dutch model. At this time, Princess Louise raised her handbag and said, "This is the latest Louis Vuitton bag in Europe. One costs almost £120, which is the annual income per capita in the UK. It is currently the most expensive bag brand for attending European noble ladies' banquets." She added, "The most popular perfume in London right now is called Royal Eau de Cologne. It has become the royal perfume of various royal families, and noble women are scrambling to buy it. It has long been a status symbol for noble ladies among the upper class in Europe. Your Majesty William IV, I heard that the perfume shop called Royal Eau de Cologne, with a Guerlain logo, headquartered in Amsterdam, is preparing to launch its latest style. When the time comes, remember to ask Queen Alexandra, the boss behind the scenes, to ask this shop to bring more goods to Athens. I wish you all a happy Mid-Autumn Festival." Chapter 589 Queen, I want New Zealand, can you agree? Princess Louise seemed to like these topics very much. Not only did they attract Queen Victoria, Queen Sophie and other women, but even William III, his brother, Crown Prince Edward, and his fiancée, Crown Prince Frederick, looked at them with curiosity. Even William IV was surprised. Princess Louise seemed to be envious and said, "British noblewomen, including me, are also customers of Alexandra Royal Cologne and Alexandra Royal Louis Vuitton, which are world-renowned Dutch luxury goods, just like many European noblewomen. Moreover, the British and French royal families and the nobles of the two countries are the largest consumer markets for these luxury goods groups. What many people don't even know is that Queen Eugenie, who is currently the regent of France, is also a major customer of Cartier jewelry under the Alexandra Luxury Group. In addition to Queen Alexandra's own use, Queen Eugenie is also the first royal customer of these luxury goods from other European countries and the largest individual customer." When Queen Victoria heard this, she could not keep calm on her face. For the first time, she showed panic that should not appear when facing the monarch of the world's most powerful country. Obviously, she seemed to have guessed something incredible. The other people also thought of many things, so they couldn't help but think of what William IV had just said, that the ruler of Paris was Queen Eugenie, not Napoleon II, who was defending the city of Landy on the front line. Princess Louise didn't seem to know that these few words had caused a huge uproar in the hearts of the few people. She continued, "It took these brands 4 years from 1863 to 1866 to really make such a big name. Because I am also a senior member of these brands, I know that 90% of the British royal family and aristocracy have been caught in one fell swoop. Brother, the perfume you are wearing now is also one of the royal colognes in a series." Ignoring Crown Prince Edward's change of expression, she continued, "It is said that King Louis I of Portugal liked the Alexandra Cartier jewelry brand very much. Before the 5th anniversary of his accession to the throne in November 1866, he specially ordered 27 crowns from this brand for the celebration ceremony at a celebratory dinner in Lisbon. It caused a sensation in Europe at the time, and then letters of appointment from royal jewelers in more than a dozen countries continued to pour into this brand. It was because of the orders from royal families of various countries that aristocrats from various countries followed suit. After 40 years of highlight moments, this brand was also called the jeweler of the emperor of jewelers all over the world. Finally, Princess Louise said to William IV, "In just 7 years, Queen Alexandra has become the Secretary General of the International Women's Union, a world organization, and has also created the Alexandra Group, the world's largest luxury brand that integrates jewelers, perfumes, luxury bags, etc. It is terrifying. It must be said that Queen Alexandra has become an idol for many of our young European women." As Princess Louise revealed the truth, everyone present, except William IV, couldn't help but feel cold. Queen Sophie, who was somewhat dissatisfied with Queen Victoria's guidance just now, heard the appearance of these groups of data, and she had already found that she had underestimated the eldest daughter-in-law before. Especially when she heard the envious tone of Princess Louise, The second daughter-in-law after tomorrow, she actually derived a little pride. Alexandra is my daughter-in-law. No matter how promising she is also the wife of my eldest son. Thinking of this, when she looked at Queen Victoria again, she showed a little complacency. This made Queen Victoria a little strange. Seeing his mother's change of attitude, William IV smiled. If they knew that these brands now sell goods worth more than £10 million a year, their sales are second only to the East India Company, the largest company in the Netherlands, and the Far East Group, the second largest company in the Netherlands, becoming the third largest company in the Netherlands. Even in terms of profit, they are almost on par with the two major companies, which is amazing. Moreover, the Alexandra Group has been working hard to enter the clothing industry recently. The crinoline-style long skirts currently popular in European courts have become a new highlight of the clothing companies under the Alexandra Group. In the previous life, this was designed by Bosch, the court designer who was extremely beloved by Queen Eugenie of the French Empire, in 1868. However, under the guidance of William IV, Alexandra had already recruited this person in 1864. In 1866, a kind of skirt made of cloth woven with horsetail as warp was called crinoline in cone shape. In order to commercialize it, William IV also reminded Alexandra that when expanding production, she could use starched wool, silk, and cotton fabrics to replace the limit on the number of horsetails, and she could also tie iron wire and whalebone with ropes. The crinoline skirt caused a sensation among European nobles as soon as it came out in 1866. It was considered by Europeans to be the most beautiful skirt in history. The skirt was very large with a cone shape, and the skirt's circumference reached 5 to 9 meters. At present, almost all European ladies wear off-shoulder sleeveless tops, tower-sleeved shirts inside, and trousers underneath. This is also the most perfect style of romantic long skirts in the future. Not only that, the current hairstyles and headdresses in Europe have also changed with the popularity of the crinoline skirt launched by the Alexandra Group. The hair was combed into a bun, and she wore a narrow flower-brimmed soft hat on her head. Flowers were inserted in her temples. The hairstyle was relatively simple, which highlighted her exposed neck and chest, because it was coordinated with a fluffy skirt. William IV was laying the foundation for the Netherlands to become the peak of fashion in Europe and even the world for the next few hundred years. The appearance of the crinoline long skirt made the European royal family and aristocracy unconsciously infiltrated by the cultural influence of the Netherlands. Take Queen Eugenie this time. In fact, before coming, she knew that borrowing the Duchy of Luxembourg to Prussia would definitely cause the anger of the French, but she still dared to do it, because she knew that in the upper class of Europe in the 19th century, the anger of ordinary people could actually allow the upper class to exchange more and better interests for themselves. Queen Eugenie was a person who liked to compromise. Of course, because many people forgot that Queen Eugenie was Spanish when she was young. And Queen Eugenie's mother, Countess Montijo, was Isabella II's attendant when she was young, and she could also be said to be a wet nurse. Therefore, although the relationship between Isabella II of Spain and Napoleon II was strained, Queen Eugenie and Isabella II were still sisters in private. Isabella II had long been the matchmaker between him and Queen Eugenie. It must be said that William IV found that he had a different experience after coming to this world, because he found that many women in Europe at that time were actually very ambitious. Isabella II, Queen Eugenie, and Queen Victoria and Princess Louise, mother and daughter, were all more calculating than each other. It was precisely because of this that after he married Alexandra in 1863, he began to assist Alexandra in setting up a network of relationships with upper-class ladies and royal women in various European countries. Alexandra's intelligence network was controlled by jewelry, perfume, bags, crinoline dresses, etc., which could attract upper-class ladies. She gradually mastered the every move of the European royal palace and noble ladies. Of course, the International Union of Women's Associations made it more legitimate for Alexandra to intervene in the affairs of women in various countries. It can be said that although it has only been the first few years, the achievements are remarkable. Queen Victoria suddenly asked, "His Majesty William IV is really good at economics. The British Empire also hopes to have such a capable person. But then again, if Queen Alexandra is willing to transfer these brands to us, we can give her a good price." William IV shook his head. "This is just a joke of Alexandra, and it is also a pleasant surprise. However, if Her Majesty the Queen agrees, we don't object to the transaction. I wonder if the Queen is interested. How to trade?" Queen Victoria didn't expect William IV to agree, and others couldn't help but look at him curiously. Anyone with a discerning eye knows that these brands are extremely valuable and are still on the rise. William IV should also know this, and they don't think this deal will be so cheap. Because of this, like Queen Victoria, they are all interested in how William IV will bid. Queen Sophie was afraid that her son would suffer, so she immediately gave him a signal, but William IV's unshakable look made her feel powerless. This guy has grown up and is much more stubborn than before. A grown-up son cannot be controlled by his mother. William IV said in a lion-like voice, the Queen should have some idea of the value of these brands. If the Queen agrees, I am willing to transfer the royal cologne to Her Majesty. Last year, it sold for 50 million Dutch guilders. Well, it is worth 2 million pounds of perfume. As this data appeared, although the people present had guessed that the amount would not be small, they were still breathless for 5 seconds at the 2 million pounds. What can 2 million pounds buy in this era? A steam battleship sold by the Netherlands to the United States of America costs 200,000 pounds. The next European first-class sailing battleship costs 100,000 pounds. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, which has the highest annual GDP per capita in the world, is 150 pounds. The second highest UK is only 120 pounds. The United States of America is only 70 pounds now, and the Russian Empire is currently 20 pounds per capita. Looking at these data, don't you know how much these 2 million pounds are worth? It is precisely because of knowing this that several people can't help but take a deep breath and try to be more gentlemanly. 2 million pounds. Queen Victoria was also shocked by this number. It's not that she has never experienced such a large amount of data. She has handled more than this before, but she didn't expect that the small perfume business could form such a large industry. Moreover, it seems that the European perfume business is concentrated in the hands of the Netherlands. As far as she knows, the Netherlands accounts for more than 90% of the business. William IV actually traded a business of 2 million pounds with her. Even she couldn't help but wonder what William IV was thinking. Fortunately, she didn't have to wait for William IV for long. If the Queen agrees and the British Parliament agrees, I am willing to purchase the New Zealand islands of the British Empire with sales channels, patented formulas, production processes, etc. I wonder, what does the Queen think? Chapter 590, Crisis on the Front Line. 1869. French Empire, in Reims, east of Paris. In the green forests, there are occasional thunderous cannon shots, startling countless birds flying in the forest. Hidden under the rushing green, there is a steep mountain. The huge crack at the bottom of the mountain looks like a valley from a distance. On both sides of the valley are steep and difficult to climb smooth stone walls. The only way out is the exit that is only 2 meters wide. At this moment, a sound of horse hooves passed quickly in this lush forest, just when it was about to enter the entrance. Figures flash on the peak above the valley, and then a low-level non-commissioned officer in French military uniform led hundreds of French Guard soldiers and asked in a deep voice, "Who dares to trespass into His Majesty's temporary camp?" Defies, commander of the 5th Army under Marshal MacMahon of Sedan, requests to see His Majesty on behalf of Marshal MacMahon. Although Defies' face was full of anxiety, he looked at the guards in front of him and said sadly, "People from the Challenge Legion? General, wait a moment." Not long after that, Defies met an old acquaintance in the military, Bourbaki, commander of the guards of His Majesty Napoleon III. "Old friend, you actually come back to Reims at this time?" Bourbaki asked. "What's the important matter that requires you to see His Majesty at this time?" Sedan was suddenly attacked by Prussian troops from the east, south and north at 5 o'clock this morning. We estimate that the Prussian army has dispatched more than 150,000 troops this time, while we only have 60,000 troops in Sedan, and they are exhausted troops. Marshal MacMahon believes that the Prussian army is determined to win Sedan this time and is resisting tenaciously. At the same time, he requests His Majesty to support the front line. As soon as these words came out, hundreds of Guard soldiers and Bourbaki present were immediately shocked. The 150,000 Prussian troops attacked Sedan? Although it was expected, no one expected the Prussian army to be so impatient. Defies was still in shock about the Prussian army at this time. He couldn't help but think of the words of Marshal MacMahon before he rushed back to Reims. "Remember, if Your Majesty doesn't have reinforcements this time, you should stay in Reims, which is safer than here. It's not a big deal for France to lose Bazaine and MacMahon. But if you lose the mainstay commanders, then the French Empire will really be over. Remember, come back if there are reinforcements. If there are no reinforcements, then you should find a chance to return to Paris, which will be your best stage in the future. Marshal MacMahon, who is like a teacher and friend, had a rebirth for him, so at this time he still had this last glimmer of hope for Napoleon II's answer. I hope your majesty will not disappoint me. When he followed Bourbaki into the center of the camp, he prayed in his heart. At the same time, he secretly made a decision that if Napoleon III chose to give up Sedan, then he would definitely make Napoleon III regret it in the future. When he saw Napoleon III, Defies found that Napoleon III was much older than half a year ago, and seemed to be more than 10 years older. At the age of 61, he looked almost 70 years old. For some reason, he found that the once noble French Emperor Napoleon III was just an old man with more power after he made that decision. After a long time, a voice that seemed helpless and powerless asked, "Does MacMahon really think Sedan needs reinforcements?" Asking in return, "Does the front need reinforcements?" The voice was calm and without anger. Defies' heart sank, as if hope had faded a little. He replied, "Yes, the enemy has 150,000 troops and we only have 60,000. Napoleon III interrupted, "But we are guarding and the other side is attacking." Up to now in history, the loss of manpower in defending a city is at least half less than that in attacking. Defies raised his head and looked at the extremely old and wrinkled face. He sneered in his heart and said indifferently, "But our soldiers have participated in many wars in succession. They are physically and mentally exhausted. Facing the Prussian army that is recuperating and fighting in rotation, our resistance has dropped to a terrifying level." Napoleon III thought this was a quibble and said bluntly, "That's the problem of officers. How to boost morale and how to fight back against invaders for the country. These are what we learned in military school. MacMahon is an old man in the French military. Doesn't he understand? Does he need me to teach him?" Defies' hope was instantly annihilated. He knew that this trip was in vain, as Napoleon III certainly had no intention of supporting the front. Defias asked bluntly, "Your Majesty means that the city of Sedan on the front line can only fend for itself?" Napoleon III seemed to turn around in anger, leaving Defias with a cold back. "Go back and tell MacMahon to hold on there to the death. Right now the entire Eastern military is in emergency, and soldiers are needed everywhere. The Netherlands in the north is also worrying. Tell him that when the 80,000 regular troops from the Far East return to the mainland, I will use them all to overwhelm Sedan. Tell him to hold on for another 10 days. Defias smiled, then said resolutely, "Your command." Then he performed a standard French salute and walked out heavily. After seeing him leave, Bourbaki said to Napoleon III worriedly, "Your Majesty, are you really not going to rescue Sedan? The Prussian Second Army and the First Army are attacking from the center in the north, and Marshal MacMahon has only 60,000 people to fight. Moreover, judging from Defias' attitude just now, it seems that his loyalty to you has been shaken. After he returns, will he let MacMahon and his corps become the next Marshal Bazaine? It would have been better if he hadn't said it." As soon as he said it, Napoleon II's face turned from angry. Bazaine, that bastard, actually surrendered to Prussia with 30,000 men, which made Napoleon III laughingstock in Europe. 30,000 men. If these 30,000 troops were used to support the Challenge Corps, then the army in his hands would not be so tight now. At present, there are only 100,000 troops in Reims. If half of them are allocated to support MacMahon, then the military power in his hands will become smaller, and in this chaotic world of war, what can be more reliable than having the army in one's own hands? This is the wise saying he learned from his uncle Napoleon I. He said harshly, "We will talk about Bazaine later. I have my own difficulties at the moment." After that, he revealed an astonishing news to Bourbaki. The Netherlands proposed to close the passage to the Duchy of Luxembourg linked to the Kingdom of Prussia on the condition that we give them the Mauritius Islands and the Kerguelen Islands in the Indian Ocean. Bourbaki was shocked and angry. "What? The Netherlands is taking advantage of the fire to rob? We can't agree to them." Napoleon III shook his head and smiled bitterly in dissatisfaction. "The news came this morning. Queen Eugenie has called back and the Netherlands agreed, because those guys in the Paris Parliament and Charles and others all agreed to stabilize the Netherlands first. Now, people have been sent to Amsterdam. Eugenie called to say that she is powerless to stop these nobles' ideas." Bourbaki was stunned. Chapter 591, Land Power and Maritime Power. 1869, Crown Prince Frederick of the Kingdom of Greece and Princess Louise of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom had a grand wedding in Athens. Crown Prince Frederick seemed to cherish this opportunity to promote himself very much. He told the European Times at the Athens wedding that he wanted this marriage to be free from the constraints of Greeks or foreign dynasties. "I prefer a woman I love and respect to a strange woman with whom a marriage will have both advantages and disadvantages." Crown Prince Frederick, Star of the Sea, asserted that the new Crown Princess Louise was a bit like the former Queen Josephine of the French Empire, and she had the virtues of Queen Josephine. Later, Crown Princess Louise also cooperated with her husband, Crown Prince Frederick, to show this side of her. The Crown Princess of the Kingdom of Greece cleverly refused the diamond jewelry offered to her by the city of Athens and donated the money for the jewelry to an orphanage in Athens. In addition, the secular wedding was held at noon on October 15, 1869 at the Greek royal palace. All the dignitaries were present. The Greek king's minister of state, Fold, was the master of ceremonies. An hour-long concert ended the ceremony. The Orthodox religious wedding was held on October 16, 1869. Athens was full of Greek blue and white striped flags, and there were colorful linings and fir trees with ornaments in the same color as the Greek flag everywhere. The delegation was crowded on land, and the Acropolis of Athens, where the wedding was held, was full of viewing platforms. The etiquette was based on the wedding of the former Greek kingdom Otto I and Queen Maria of Oldenburg from the German Confederation in 1836. The chief horseman, person, rented horses from London and restored the luxurious carriages of the former King Otto I, who was ousted. The cavalry regiment was the main part of the Guard of Honor. At noon, the large group of people left the Greek royal palace and headed for the Parthenon, Erechtheion in Athens along the new main street of the Acropolis. The Greek army and the Greek royal guard formed a human wall. Amid the sound of bells, salutes, bugles and drums, the huge team took an hour to reach the Parthenon. Although it was winter, the weather was good. Overall, there was more curiosity than cheering on the streets of Athens. When arriving at the vestibule of the Parthenon, Princess Louise turned to the crowd and performed a kneeling ceremony, which attracted the attention of everyone present and aroused cheers in return. Later, in the Erechtheion, she also used various methods to win the favor of the Greek people. This made William IV, who watched the whole process, sigh. Sometimes, you have to admit that ambitious women have inexhaustible energy. Suddenly, he saw the deep eyes of Queen Victoria not far away. It seems that the Queen of England is also amazed by the various behaviors of her fourth daughter. Louise finally left London and jumped into the European continent. This can be said to be like a fish in water, and a dragon has its own sea. He looked at his younger brother, Crown Prince Frederick, who was the groom today, and thought to himself, Frederick will definitely not be able to handle Louise. I just don't know how long Frederick can hold on. Alice, it seems that there will be more troubles in the future. After the ceremony, the large group of people took the main street to return to the Greek royal palace, where the congratulatory delegations from various countries were received. Afterwards, Ceylon and the bride left the wedding entourage and attended a dinner banquet at the royal palace. On the occasion of the wedding of Crown Prince Frederick and Princess Louise, King William II of Greece announced that nearly 5,000 people were pardoned, and only 600 people were expelled or exiled. After the wedding, William IV had received an invitation from Queen Victoria to meet. Of course, William IV would not refuse this. However, unlike the last time when William II and others were present, this time, only Queen Victoria and William IV met. The meeting took place at the British Embassy in Greece. On 16th, 1869, at 10 a.m., Athens time. Both of them knew the language of each other's country, so there was no communication barrier. A 29-year-old Dutch king and a 50-year-old British queen met alone, so naturally there would be no topic of love. The meeting between the two unfolded in a relaxed and calculated manner. Queen Victoria was the first to fire the gun. This wedding is the second royal wedding held in Greece 33 years later, since the 17-year-old Prince Otto from the Kingdom of Bavaria in 1832 was pushed by other countries to become the king of the newly restored Greece, Otto I, and held a grand wedding in 1836. No wonder the whole country of Greece celebrated it. Queen Victoria smiled and said, "This wedding seems to be even more grand than the wedding of Your Majesty William IV and Queen Alexandra. Do you have any objections? After all, the status of your younger brother, the Crown Prince, is more grand than that of you who was the king at the time. It is normal to have objections. In fact, I think the wedding of Napoleon II and Queen Eugenie in 1853 was unparalleled. But so what? We are still facing the threat of war now, William IV slowly reminded the Queen. Many countries do not understand why the crisis suddenly comes. It is because of their short-sightedness and their lack of understanding of the sensitivity of everyone's own dangers. Queen Victoria asked back, isn't it shocking and high-profile enough that His Majesty William IV is currently lending the Duchy of Luxembourg to Prussia to attack the French Empire? William IV said, as a matter of course, the location of the Netherlands is destined for us to judge the situation and stand on the side that is beneficial to our own interests, benefiting the Netherlands? Do you think Prussia will be the final winner? Queen Victoria. At least I don't think that the chaotic French Second Empire led by Napoleon III will be the opponent of the Iron Triangle of William I of Prussia, Bismarck and Moltke. Do you think Prussia will not win? It was William IV's turn to ask back. Queen Victoria was stunned. Yes, Prussian soldiers are strong. If Prussia properly deploys its troops, it seems that it is not impossible to reach Paris. But she would never have thought that Prussia actually occupied Paris. If she knew, she would not be discussing it so calmly now, but would go back to London to deploy troops and generals, openly or secretly supporting France to prevent Prussia from expanding too much. But although France suffered a defeat in the east, it only lost less than 1/20th of its territory and 1/4 of its army. The main force is still there. Moreover, France has a population of 33 million, so it can easily mobilize millions of troops. William IV laughed and seemed to sneer at this. In the two countries of Prussia and France, the decrees of the Kingdom of Prussia are much stronger than those of the French Empire. As far as I know, in the French Empire, many people have begun to miss the First French Republic, 1792 to 1804. Napoleon I replaced him and established the First French Empire, and the Second French Republic, 1848 to 1852. Napoleon III, as president, proclaimed himself emperor in 1853 and established the Second French Empire. Queen Victoria was immediately furious. The French Empire has always been the biggest source of revolution in Europe. The birth of these two republics had an influence that went beyond the scope of France and impacted the rule of European monarchies. It seemed to echo the United States, especially in 1848, when the entire European monarchy was changed to a constitutional monarchy to calm the anger of those affected in various countries. William IV was very satisfied with Queen Victoria's mood change. He warned, Your Majesty, in 1853, His Majesty Napoleon II suppressed those people as the president and then used the support of the old French nobles to become the French emperor. This in itself is not legitimate. It was okay when he was strong before, but now facing the relentless pressure from Prussia, those who were once suppressed by him are very happy. Under the joint attack from both inside and outside, the fate of the Second French Empire is really hanging by a thread. Queen Victoria suddenly stared at William IV and asked, Bismarck and his people saw the instability in France, so they took the opportunity to attack and shake the rule of Napoleon III. At this time, unless Napoleon III wins a battle, he can greatly promote his own rule. Otherwise, his rule will be corrupted, and 33 million French people will no longer be loyal. At this time, Bismarck, William I and others took the opportunity to make France an easy bone to chew when the French people were scattered. The Netherlands made its choice in this way. But what I don't understand is, even if the situation is not favorable to France, there is no need to stand on Prussia's side and become the anger of the French, right? Facing the Queen's question, William IV seemed to answer very frankly, because, after Prussia decided to defeat France, it would give the French Empire's Middle Eastern territory of East Oman to the Netherlands. What? Queen Victoria's eyes widened. Well, the Dutch king, you calculated so accurately, aren't you afraid that you will lose the bet? William IV shrugged, looked at Queen Victoria with a smile and reminded her, if there is a possibility of losing, why did the Queen invite me to attend today's meeting? The Queen was speechless. Yes, as she received more and more unfavorable intelligence on the Franco-Prussian battlefield, she was a little panicked. I don't want the royal cologne. If I am going to trade New Zealand Islands with you, what are you going to let Britain get? Finally, she gave in, but the Queen was not someone who would easily compromise. William IV was ready to throw a bomb to stun the other party. If that's the case, I am willing to mediate the war between Upper Burma and the British Empire. Seeing the Queen's face change for the first time, he further said, Your Majesty should know that the Netherlands has this ability. Queen Victoria couldn't help but change her face. William IV showed his claws in front of her for the first time, and it was still a serious threat. Although everyone had tacitly agreed that the Netherlands supported Upper Burma before, on the surface it was the French Empire that supported Upper Burma, but in fact the Netherlands was also one of them. At this time, Britain and Upper Burma were still fighting small wars. The current situation in Europe made it difficult for Queen Victoria, who was watching, to split her attention because of the war in the Far East with Upper Burma. It was false that William IV proposed to exchange the Royal Colony for the New Zealand Islands at this time. It was true that he would cut off support for Upper Burma in exchange for New Zealand. However, the New Zealand Islands were a plan she and Viscount Palmerston had made to balance the Netherlands after she transferred the Australian continent to the Netherlands to help Britain take over South Africa. It was a means for Britain to effectively balance the Netherlands after it rose to become Britain's most powerful opponent in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Now it seems that William IV also understands their ideas. But now it is time to break the deadlock? For this reason, Queen Victoria immediately chose to choose between the two options. If she agreed to William IV, Britain would lose a bargaining chip to balance the Netherlands. If she did not agree, Britain was currently at a disadvantage in the Upper Burma War. The weapons previously supported by the French Empire, coupled with the vague involvement of the Netherlands, made Britain seem to have entered a cycle in the Far East where France was dragged down by a large number of troops. What if Britain fell into the same war vortex as France? Would the British Army be able to resist? Of course, the British Navy was still the most powerful, but Britain also had many colonies in Africa and Canada. If the United States of America once again raised its ambitions in Canada, and the British Army was entangled in the Far East, what would it do then? I feel embarrassed to see the Queen's distressed imagination. How about this? It's October 16th now. Why don't you give me an answer in 3 days? The Queen should have an answer by then. Queen Victoria asked sternly, "Are you so confident?" "Yes, I'm sure the Queen will agree." William IV stood up, straightened the wrinkles on his clothes, and then looked at Queen Victoria, who was still sitting still, and said, "I think the British Empire should be able to accommodate a strong Netherlands, because to be honest, we are all constitutional monarchies, and the relationship between Britain and France cannot be applied to the Netherlands and Britain. Moreover, the Netherlands, like Britain, will be a maritime power in the future. We feel that when facing land powers such as the Russian Empire, the Kingdom of Prussia, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the French Empire, our position as the Netherlands and Britain is the same, that is, to maintain our maritime country's suppression of land powers. Only by dividing those major powers on the Eurasian continent could we, countries whose main territories are isolated overseas, be able to more effectively find a way of survival that is beneficial to ourselves." William IV said very seriously, "The Netherlands recognizes the British Empire as the world's largest maritime power, but also hopes that the British Empire will increase the weight of the Netherlands among the maritime powers to a sufficient level. I think only in this way can the Netherlands and Britain live in harmony in the future, instead of being suspicious of each other." His works include The Geographical Pivot of History, Britain and the British Ocean, and Democracy's Ideals and Reality. Mackenzie, a British geographer and geopolitician who will become world-renowned in the future, was born in 1861. His 1919 saying, "Whoever rules Eastern Europe rules the hinterland, whoever rules the hinterland rules the world island, whoever rules the world island rules the world," had not yet appeared, but William IV's remarks made Queen Victoria's eyes light up. William IV eventually left the British embassy in Greece, but he knew that New Zealand might be within his grasp soon. At that time, the Netherlands would truly own an enviable piece of land with natural barriers in the Far East. Chapter 592, Transit through the Austro-Hungarian Empire. 1869, the wedding of the Kingdom of Greece was finally completed after the religious ceremony. Princess Louise also changed from the Protestant Church of England to the Orthodox Greek Orthodox Church, according to custom, and the wedding was officially over. However, the Greek wedding ended, but the Franco-Prussian War in Western Europe started again today. At 5 a.m. Paris time on October 16, 1869, the Prussian army attacked Sedan, where Marshal MacMahon's Challenge Corps was located in eastern France. In this attack, the Prussian army dispatched more than 150,000 people, while the Challenge Corps had only 60,000 defenders. The war between the two armies was fierce, and the war lasted until October 18, 1869. Although MacMahon led the Challenge Corps to resist hard, strangely, There was no reinforcement in the direction of Paris. In the end, MacMahon was defeated by the Prussian army. MacMahon died in battle, along with Felix Douay, commander of the 7th Army. Defies, commander of the 5th Army, led the remaining 20,000 troops, mainly from the 5th Army, to retreat. Unexpectedly, they did not go to Reims, where Napoleon II was, but to Saint-Quentin, the capital of N province in the northwest, which puzzled many French people. However, they quickly put this aside at this time, because they were facing a more interesting problem. Now that Prussia had occupied Sedan, the direction of the invasion of the Prussian army that the French Empire would face next became particularly noteworthy. Kingdom of Greece, Athens port of Piraeus. 2 days after the wedding of the Kingdom of Greece, William IV finally set out on the road to return to the Netherlands, but this time he did not take the water route, but chose to go north through the Austro-Hungarian Empire and then continue west through the Kingdom of Prussia. William II asked again with concern, "Are you sure you can go back from the Austro-Hungarian Empire?" Facing the strong sea breeze at the port of Piraeus, his hair was a little messy. William IV nodded and smiled. "The French Empire is currently angry. Alexandra will not agree to take the water route." William II reminded, "It seems that you haven't been to Australia in the Far East for a few years. In fact, it is more appropriate for you to go to the Far East now. Not only can you avoid embarrassing topics, but also win the hearts of the people in the Far East." William IV shook his head. Seeing William II's inquiry, he said with a fiery look in his eyes, "This trip to Prussia and Austria is a must-go for me." William II looked around and saw that there was no one around, so he said worriedly, "But Prussia has wolfish ambitions. Now that the French Empire has been defeated by them, the Netherlands will be a piece of meaty bone for Prussia. If William I and Bismarck are a little greedy, then your safety index will definitely be huge." William IV, "No risk, no gain. It is precisely because of Prussia's ambitions that I need this trip to Prussia even more." He comforted William II and said, "Father, although the Austro-Hungarian Empire is not as powerful as Prussia, it is also strong. In addition, Denmark and Sweden are the allies of the Netherlands in the north." William IV said wisely, "When everyone thought that the Netherlands would face a more terrifying Kingdom of Prussia, they did not realize that the circle of the Netherlands' allies was also actively and rapidly expanding. Perhaps after this trip to the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was originally ignored by the Netherlands, will become a powerful ally of the Netherlands." He licked his lips, as if there was a table of delicious food in front of him. "Visit Vienna first, and then Berlin. I think these two European powers should know what the Netherlands means. What's more, Alexandra is currently doing a good job as regent of the Netherlands. I think Bismarck will know how to make a choice." William II was stunned when he heard this. Although the actions taken by his eldest son William IV, Hendrik, in the Netherlands over the years have shocked him and made him proud, many of the actions are unfamiliar to him. Therefore, he only looks at the results but does not know the process, so he does not have much feeling. But now that William IV has said what he thinks, his eyes suddenly light up. Yes, the Kingdom of the Netherlands also has a certain influence on the German Confederation, because the Duchy of Luxembourg and the Duchy of Nassau are two small principalities in the German Confederation. But because the Netherlands has never stood in the competition between Prussia and Austria for the leader of the German Confederation and remained neutral, it has also become a neutral party. It was not until William IV succeeded to the throne that the relationship with the Kingdom of Prussia became close, and even became an ally for a time, which made the Austrian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire have certain opinions about the Netherlands. Since last year, the competition between the Netherlands and Prussia for influence in North America has deteriorated, and William IV has tried to win over the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and finally won it over to become a partner country of the Nordic Alliance. William II linked these together, and he suddenly realized that it seemed that all of this was intended by William IV to advance according to plan. If it is true, then the handwriting of his eldest son is too big. It seems that Bismarck and others are being calculated. Thinking of this, he looked at William IV and finally smiled and said, "Well, I'm old, and this world belongs to your generation. Nassau Orange is yours. I just hope that you can help Frederick when he encounters difficulties in the future." William IV nodded and said, "I will, provided that he can understand the hierarchy." "Okay, Father, it's getting late. I think Vienna is also looking forward to my arrival." After saying that, he and William II couldn't help but smile knowingly. At 11 a.m. on October 18, 1869, William IV left Athens and boarded the Dutch fleet at the port of Piraeus. However, to the surprise of the world, he did not return along the original route, but announced that after leaving Athens, he would sail west through the Kythera Strait and then go north, which shocked everyone. Many people thought that this was because William IV was afraid that the French Empire might intercept him in the western Mediterranean or the English Channel, and many people ridiculed this. Internationally, many people also agreed with this. Queen Victoria, who had already returned to London, was also puzzled. Like everyone else, she was guessing what William IV was going to do. At 2 p.m. on October 18, 1869, Vienna, the capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, suddenly released a message that, at the invitation of Franz Joseph I, King William IV of the Netherlands would visit the Austro-Hungarian Empire from October 19 to November 10, 1869, and would go to Vienna to meet with Franz Joseph I. Vienna also announced that the two kings would discuss further developing friendly relations between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Netherlands. After the news came out, the world's previous chaos suddenly changed. It was obvious that Franz Joseph I in Vienna was helping William IV of the Netherlands to overcome difficulties. To put it simply, he ignored the feelings of the French Empire and insisted on selling a favor to the Netherlands. This statement by the Austro-Hungarian Empire immediately made many people in Paris yell and curse. However, Vienna was not willing to be outdone. They started to dig up old accounts. This old account was naturally when the Austrian Empire fought with the Kingdom of Sardinia, later Italy, for Venice in 1859. Napoleon III mobilized the French army to help the Kingdom of Sardinia of Emmanuel II, which led to the Austrian Empire's defeat there and the loss of Venice and other places. When this old account came out, the Italian royal palace was a little embarrassed because they seemed to have become the beneficiary of France's help. However, when Napoleon III of the French Empire clumsily and greedily wanted Italy to give territorial compensation, the two countries fell out. Therefore, Italy's position is now neither side is helping the other, standing there. Therefore, public opinion in the French Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire has become heated. As William IV's fleet entered the Adriatic Sea, the quarrel between France and Austria became more intense. On October 19, 1869, King William IV of the Netherlands landed at the port of Rijeka, the northern port of Kvarner Bay in the Croatian region of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Archduke Rainer Ferdinand, Prime Minister of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, personally greeted him at the Rijeka pier on behalf of Emperor Joseph I of Austria. On October 19, 1869, the Kingdom of the Netherlands issued a message that surprised everyone in Europe. It turned out that the news from the Netherlands was that the Kingdom of the Netherlands would close all borders of the Duchy of Luxembourg at 0000 hours on October 21, 1869, Amsterdam time, and prohibit any army and militia from other countries from entering. Paris and even the entire French cheered when they heard the news. But other countries are indeed puzzled by the Netherlands' actions, and at the same time, they are also very interested in what Prussia's attitude will be. Will Berlin be angry about this? If angry, will the consequences be serious for the Netherlands? However, to their disappointment, Prime Minister Bismarck expressed respect for the Netherlands' approach in Berlin, and said that the friendly relations between the Netherlands and Prussia remained unchanged, and he would continue to promote the development of relations between the two countries. At this time, in Berlin, the Kingdom of Prussia, a spokesman for the Berlin Palace announced that at the invitation of King William I of Prussia, the two kings would visit the Prussian palace from November 11, 1869 to December 1, 1869, and they would attend the first Science and Technology Exchange Festival held by the two countries in Berlin. Well, at this time, no one would ridiculously think that William IV was hesitating in the eastern Mediterranean for fear of retaliation from the French Empire. On the contrary, all the French thought of a question. Is the King of the Netherlands preparing to connect Prussia and Austria-Hungary, which have invaded French territory, to prepare for the next larger war of aggression against France? No one knows, because those who know are currently preparing for their own work. On October 25, 1869, after a long journey of 6 days of bumpy carriages, William IV finally arrived in Vienna. William IV and Joseph I held a king's meeting immediately after William IV rested for a day. The topic was naturally the Franco-Prussian War. The meeting between the two kings in Vienna, whether in London, Paris, Berlin, or even Milan, Rome, St. Petersburg, etc., could not help but turn their attention there. Because, what kind of changes will William IV's visit to Vienna bring about in the European situation? It is really worth looking forward to and worrying about. Chapter 593 Meeting with Emperor Joseph I of Austria. On October 26, 1869, when the eyes of the whole of Europe were on Vienna and Berlin, the news that the Netherlands suddenly announced that it would no longer lend its passage to the Kingdom of Prussia after October 20, 1869, immediately surprised everyone. Has the Dutch prodigal son returned? However, King William IV of the Netherlands, who is now visiting the Austro-Hungarian Empire, suddenly did not deny the news released by the Kingdom of Prussia that William IV would visit Prussia after November 11. Obviously, this news eliminated the possibility of deterioration in the relationship between the Netherlands and Prussia. So what exactly caused the Netherlands to change its mind? What many people don't know is that at this time, the port of Perth in Western Australia in the Far East had sent a fleet of 2 second-class sailing warships and 5 light-sailing patrol ships to the Kerguelen Islands in the southern Indian Ocean 5 days ago. This fleet was the one that received the telegram on October 19, 1869 and set off on October 21 to hand over to the French on the islands. At the same time, a small fleet set out from Toamasina Naval Port, an important port in the east of Madagascar, 5 days ago and has now arrived at the 2 major islands of the Mascarene Islands in the east, Mauritius and Reunion. Currently, 300 people are handing over management rights to the French army in St. Denis on Reunion Island and Port Louis on Mauritius Island. However, such a major news can't be concealed for long. The first place where the news came out was Paris. When someone submitted an article to tell the Paris Daily about this news, the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, after receiving hints from some senior shareholders, disclosed the information about the transaction between the Netherlands and France on October 27. When the news was confirmed, Paris was quiet. However, everyone speculated that this was just the darkness before dawn, and it was also a brief calm before the storm. Of course, it was not only the attitude of the French that attracted attention. When it was known that the Netherlands had traded with France to obtain a small island in the Indian Ocean, it turned out that all countries were jealous. First, when King Emmanuel II of Italy was on a domestic visit in Milan, he expressed his support for the French Empire's exercise of its sovereignty, which every country should have. However, Italy did not think that Paris's approach was the best for the citizens of Paris. Obviously, the Italian king was a little jealous. At the same time, even Sweden and Denmark asked Amsterdam about the situation. Presumably, these 2 countries were dissatisfied with the fact that the Netherlands had taken over the French Empire's Indian Ocean island without notifying them in advance. However, perhaps they thought of William IV's idea of expressing his hope that Spain would become the new boss of the alliance in Athens some time ago, which made them unwilling to put too much pressure on the Netherlands at present. In the end, the 2 countries could only hint at their dissatisfaction and then their voices disappeared. The joint exercises continued outside the port of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. At the same time, in Vienna, Austria-Hungary, William IV and Joseph I were holding a formal meeting between the kings of the 2 countries. The participants of the meeting were William IV and Nicholas Pearson, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, from the Dutch side, and Franz Joseph I Enrichberg, the Foreign Minister of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, from the Austro-Hungarian side. The meeting naturally started with a casual chat to find the atmosphere. First, Franz Joseph I blessed the marriage of William IV's younger brother, Crown Prince Frederick, and then asked about the wedding. After that, the 2 of them couldn't help but talk about the size after the former Bavarian prince and former Greek king Otto I were driven out of power. William IV naturally had a 2-pronged answer. After 10 minutes had passed, the 2 of them, under the topic of Joseph I, finally started with the French Empire's dissatisfaction with the Netherlands' passing through the Duchy of Luxembourg to Prussia. William IV naturally used a gun to block a gun, and the gods and ghosts were not surprised. So he also took out the real stuff at the same time. To the north are the Aisne and Nord provinces close to the former Belgium, as well as the Hainaut province taken back from Belgium, and further north are the East Flanders and West Flanders provinces currently owned by the Netherlands. If you go west from Sedan, you will reach Reims in the Marne province where Napoleon III is located, and to the west of the Marne province is Paris. To the south of Sedan is Verdun, the capital of the Meuse province. If Prussia follows the direction of the escape of defies, commander of the 5th Army of the Challenge Corps, to the north, then if all goes well, it may directly reach the Strait of Calais on the French coast of the English Channel. If the English Channel is attacked, then the British Empire will definitely not be as quiet as it is now. Bismarck is such a smart man. To the west, he will directly fight a life and death battle with Napoleon III outside the city of Reims. If Verdun is occupied to the south, then the entire eastern France will fall into Prussia's pocket from Sedan to southern Switzerland. Franz Joseph I secretly praised in his heart, as expected of the monarch who led the rapid rise of the Netherlands. From these analyses, he has laid out the pros and cons of Prussia's possible attack routes in the future for Bismarck and William I to choose. At the same time, if Napoleon III also takes these as precautions, then at least he will be prepared for any eventuality, and casualties will be reduced a lot. He asked William IV, "So, Your Majesty William, after Prussia has calmed down for these days after taking Sedan, they are now well prepared. Where will the next direction of attack be?" William IV stared at Franz Joseph I and asked in return, "Your Majesty, if you were His Majesty William I, where do you think you should start to benefit Prussia the most?" Franz Joseph I thought for a moment, then smiled and said, "Of course it's the city of Reims. That's where Napoleon III is stationed. There are only 100,000 people there, and this time in Sedan Prussia only lost 20,000 of the 150,000 people. The 130,000 troops are enough to march to the city of Reims, and then the other Third Corps will assist. Napoleon III is the last wall of the French Empire. As long as this wall is demolished, Prussia will surely win the next Franco-Prussian War. Victory is just a matter of time." Nicholas Pearson looked at William IV and saw that he smiled and said nothing. He was familiar with his boss, but he knew that His Majesty had other ideas. Sure enough, William IV clapped his hands and praised, "Your Majesty Joseph I, this statement is quite good." Franz Joseph I frowned. He knew from his tone that William IV did not seem to agree. "Your Majesty, do you have other opinions?" "I can't say that I have any opinions, but I am a little worried." Seeing Joseph I looking over, William IV pointed out, "At present, both sides have pushed the front line to Reims and Sedan, so what about the southeast?" Several people were suddenly enlightened when they heard it. They knew what William IV meant, and did not wait for Joseph I to answer. William IV said, "I know Bismarck. He likes to do things that are sure to happen. So, I think Bismarck should not be willing to take the risk of going to Reims for a war where the outcome is hard to tell. Instead, I think he will look south and take Verdun." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 594, The Birth of the Idea of the German Empire. Prussia, Berlin. Should Prussia go south to invade Verdun in France? William I's eyes lit up when he heard Bismarck's idea. At present, all favorable factors are on Prussia's side. In this case, why not cut off the eastern territory of France to become Prussia's territory first? After all, it borders Prussia. It is also convenient for management. Why go deep into the interior of France with 30 million people? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it would be difficult for Prussia to occupy France, but if it was in the east, it would be good. Chief of the General Staff Moltke naturally agreed. The Kingdom of Prussia currently has 1 million troops and a population of 45 million, while France has a population of 33 million. I have killed 150,000 of the 600,000 troops, and there are still 450,000. In the Far East, there are 150,000 regular troops left, but there are still 300,000 regular troops left in the mainland. However, the war potential of 33 million people is huge enough, and nearly 1/3 of our 45 million people are citizens of small countries in the German Confederation that have just been annexed by us. They don't quite agree with us, Prussia. If the war is really intended to occupy the entire French Empire, Moltke said frankly, I think there seem to be a lot of difficulties for us who still have some internal troubles at present. Prime Minister Bismarck, precisely because I see this clearly, the Lorraine-Alsace region has become our target of encroachment. After that, the eastern part of France that we currently occupy, from Sedan to the northern tip of Switzerland, has become the direction that I think Prussia should strive for. Bismarck quickly came to the battle map hanging high on the wall. As he moved, everyone's eyes fell on the north-south straight line he drew. William I pondered for a while and said, Sedan Verdun Tour Belfort. Bismarck nodded and said, Yes, Your Majesty, please see. At the beginning, I designed a strategy of advancing the targets layer by layer. The first layer is the now completed Lorraine-Alsace region, and then the second target is now Sedan-Verdun-Tour-Belfort. Moltke asked curiously, what is the third layer? The third layer from north to south is Richelieu-Saint-Quentin-Reims-Chalons-Drouin-Dijon-Lons-Lee-Saunier. Bismarck glanced at William I with a little respect, and then explained, as long as we take these 3 layers, we will be at the gates of Paris, and 1/6 of the territory of the entire French Empire will fall into our hands. At this time, we will be much more calm and can advance or retreat. What about the 4th layer? William I asked hurriedly, suppressing his excitement. It has to be said that the big pie Bismarck painted was enough to keep him awake at night. The opportunity to defeat the French Empire and replace it was right in front of him. Which monarch in Europe could remain calm? The 4th layer. Bismarck shook his head. Your Majesty, I'm not trying to dissuade you. We should feel very lucky if we can complete these 3 layers of French Empire territory and let it fall into our hands. Moltke asked on behalf of William I, but with the current combat power of the French army, it seems that it is not impossible to defeat more parts of France. Bismarck pointed his finger to the southwest and sneered, do you think Queen Victoria will watch us annex the French Empire and threaten the English Channel? At the beginning, our annexation of the Kingdom of Hanover made Britain hesitate, and in the end, because of the French Empire's checks and balances, they chose to watch quietly. But this time, if we are determined to take down the French Empire, then the result will be that we will end up like Napoleon I back then. Moltke asked curiously, then will we still attack Paris? Upon hearing this, William I also looked at Bismarck. This decision is definitely the most important for Prussia in the future. How to fight and what the goal is are all reasons for the war and whether to continue or end. Now, Prussia needs a reason to continue the war. If, as Bismarck said just now, occupying the eastern part of the French Empire is already the limit, then attacking Paris will naturally become an unnecessary action. In this case, the Prussian army can just focus on the 3rd layer next. In this way, concentrating firepower to take them down will be the next goal of Moltke's 3 major Prussian corps. William I also had doubts about whether to attack Paris. It is undeniable that Bismarck's mention of Britain and Napoleon I just made him tremble slightly, because the siege of Napoleon I by many European powers at that time was vivid in his mind. Born in 1798, he observed the process of the Kingdom of Prussia's participation in the war at close range as a Prussian prince. When the Vienna Conference, which marked the end of the war, was held in 1815, he was 17 years old that year. Therefore, he was deeply impressed by France being beaten by a group of countries. So at this moment, the scales in his heart slowly pressed towards not wanting to attack Paris. When William I and Moltke thought that Bismarck did not agree to attack Paris, Bismarck's unexpected answer surprised them. We must attack Paris, Bismarck said proudly. The French Empire has already collapsed, so why can't Prussia replace it? But to let all countries know that Prussia deserves to replace them, then what is more impactful than taking down their capital, Paris, and what is more powerful than our great King William I officially announcing our victory in the Franco-Prussian War in Paris after Prussia occupied the capital of the French Empire, Paris? Driven by Bismarck's passionate words, William I and Moltke, who are more than 140 years old in total, couldn't help but get emotional. Just imagining that picture makes people's blood boil. What if the real scene is in front of you? What kind of scene is it? As long as we win the recognition of the other countries, those who have dissent in the annexed countries will not dare to act rashly from now on. I have a solution that will solve the problem once and for all. What method? William I. Bismarck said surprisingly, Your Majesty will formally announce the victory over the French Empire in Paris and then replace it with Prussia to become an empire. In order to make those who have dissent completely return to their hearts, Your Majesty can replace the citizens who now only refer to us Prussians. Moltke was surprised to hear this. He looked at William I, who was also shocked after hearing it. Bismarck said excitedly, German Empire. German Empire. William I and Moltke's eyes were as wide as they could be at this time. Moltke could even see that William I beside him was trembling all over. Not to mention His Majesty William I, he also felt a beating of cells in his body. And Bismarck's voice was obviously trembling. The three looked at each other, and William I faced the expectant eyes of Bismarck and Moltke. And finally, he chose to nod heavily. The German Confederation became the Prussian-German Empire. The three finally merged the same concept. Chapter 595, Battle of Verdun. William IV, who was meeting with Franz Joseph I in Vienna, Austria-Hungary, did not know that Bismarck, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Prussia, had formally proposed the idea of establishing the German Empire in Berlin, and it was also recognized by King William I of Prussia and Moltke, the chief of the Prussian General Staff. After this meeting, William IV and Franz Joseph I determined that the relationship between the two sides needed to be further developed, especially the two countries would cooperate in the Mediterranean and Africa. In addition, the two countries will coordinate on European affairs so that other countries will not take actions that are not beneficial to the two countries. At the same time, William IV and Franz Joseph I formally signed the document. William IV proposed to increase economic exchanges between the two countries, and the Netherlands had obvious advantages. However, Joseph I obviously also saw the benefits brought by the developed economy of the Netherlands and the Austro-Hungarian Empire and did not object. Joseph I proposed cultural dissemination, because Vienna is the most famous music sanctuary in Europe and even the world, and Joseph I wanted to rely on music culture to infect. The two also agreed to reduce investment restrictions on each other, which would help the economic development of both sides. Finally, the two agreed to coordinate more on the diplomatic relations between the Netherlands and the Austro-Hungarian Empire and third countries. The Netherlands called it a strategic relationship, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire later called it a semi-alliance relationship. On October 29, 1869, the Prussian Second Army led by Prince Karl Frederick of Prussia went directly south from Sedan to attack Verdun after replenishing 150,000 troops. Paris was greatly shocked after hearing the news. On November 1, 1869, under pressure from the aristocratic forces, French Prime Minister Charles proposed a draft to support Reims in the parliament. The proposal was immediately passed. On November 2, after the signing of the Paris Regent Eugénie, the Paris Garde Corps immediately sent 50,000 regular troops to Reims to support Napoleon III. But it was too late because on November 3, when Napoleon III had just made the decision to send 50,000 French troops to support Verdun, the army had not left yet, and Verdun had been occupied by Prince Karl Frederick's Second Army. In this battle, the Prussian Second Army of Sedan had 150,000 Prussian troops, leaving 80,000, and the remaining 70,000 attacked the 20,000 French troops in Verdun. The Prussian army suffered 18,000 casualties, with 52,000 remaining. The French army suffered 12,000 casualties, 4,000 escaped, and nearly 4,000 surrendered. The result of another quick defeat came, and Napoleon III was furious for a while, and he insisted on sending troops to Verdun despite the obstruction of his left and right staff. This time it was no longer 50,000, but the same 70,000 French army. On November 5, Emperor Napoleon III, who was stationed with 150,000 troops in Reims, counterattacked. He sent 70,000 troops to break into Verdun, but was immediately hit head-on by the Prussian army. In the end, the 70,000 French troops that entered Verdun faced 52,000 Prussian troops. After being repelled, there were only 48,000 remaining, with a loss of 22,000. The Prussian army suffered more than 26,000 casualties, and only half of them remained. On November 6, the Prussian army turned to counterattack. After receiving the support of 80,000 troops from Crown Prince Frederick of the Prussian Southern Third Army, Prince Karl Frederick immediately launched a fierce offensive against the French army. However, the offensive came from Hartmann, the commander of the 2nd Bavarian Army under the 3rd Army of Crown Prince Frederick. Hartmann led the 2nd Bavarian Army from the Lorraine and Alsace plateau areas that had just been occupied, and directly attacked the city of Nancy in the Moselle province of France. When everyone looked north to Reims, Sedan and Verdun, Nancy, which was defended by less than 5,000 French troops, fell into the hands of the 2nd Bavarian Army in less than 5 hours. After the army took Nancy, the commander of the 1st Bavarian Army, quickly joined to help the 2nd Bavarian Army block the news. At the same time, the 11th Army led by Commander Bose of the 3rd Army of Crown Prince Frederick quickly moved south and captured Epinal, the capital of the Vosges province, before 9 a.m. on November 7. Mupplinger of the 6th Army even conquered Colmar in the Upper Rhine province in 2 hours before sunset on November 6. When the news of the fall of these places spread all over France on the evening of November 7, 1869, Napoleon III was furious. He quickly telegraphed the remaining main force of the Metz Army, the 4th and 5th Army, to the temporary commander of Ledmiro to retake his lost positions. On November 8, 1869, General Radmiro led his 4th and 5th armies from Chalmon in the Upper Marne province to Tal in the Moselle province, but was intercepted by the Bavarian 2nd Army and the Bavarian 1st Army, which had been prepared. The two sides fought fiercely. As a result, Radmiro's 4th Army of the Metz Corps was defeated and continued to retreat. The Bavarian 1st and 2nd Army took advantage of the victory to pursue. In the end, General Radmiro led only 1/3 of the remaining troops to retreat to the rear of Chalmon. Using the terrain and the remaining troops, the Prussian army stopped in the eastern part of the Upper Marne province. In Prague, the capital of the Czech region at the northernmost end of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, William IV's visit to the Austro-Hungarian Empire came to an end. In 2 days, his delegation will enter Prussia. Alice, the Prague garrison arranged by Joseph I is a royal palace, which was once the summer resort of the Austrian Habsburg royal family. This time, Joseph I paid too much attention to William IV, and even used the palace as a hotel for William IV and his entourage to stay overnight. In William IV's room, all the important Dutch figures who accompanied him gathered. William IV, of course, was not to be mentioned. In addition to him, there were also Cantor, director of the Dutch National Security Council and coordinator of Atlantic Affairs, Mackay Sean, director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency, Joseph Karls, Chief of Staff of the Dutch Navy, and Nicholas Pearson, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Since the geographical location of the Haute Marne is very unique, with it as the center, whether it is to the north to Brussels, or to the south to the Swiss-French border, to the east to the Lorraine-Alsace region, or to the west to Paris, the Haute Marne is the center point of equal distance. At present, Prussia has occupied half of the eastern part of the entire northeast of Paris. This is a sign that Prussia has successfully moved the Franco-Prussian War into France. Bismarck is preparing to fight to support the war and consume the regenerative blood of the French Empire. As the former Dutch ambassador to Prussia, Nicholas Pearson's performance as the ambassador to Prussia was shocking. In this Franco-Prussian war, William IV specifically asked him, who was only the 3rd Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to accompany him. Obviously, he also took a fancy to his connections in Prussia and his understanding of Prussia. Therefore, every time the Franco-Prussian War was mentioned, the people present would first give him the opportunity to speak. It has become a habit during this period of time. Well, as the Franco-Prussian War becomes more and more brutal, we can now fully predict that in the future war, Prussia has already completed the first stage, that is, to stop the brutal war within the empire, and Prussia lives a normal life and develops its economy. Just with this one thing, if nothing unexpected happens, Prussia is already in an invincible position where it can advance or retreat. He raised his head and saw that William IV did not make any statement, but just listened calmly, making it difficult to guess what he was thinking. The Chief of Naval Staff Joseph Karls suddenly asked in surprise, "Your Majesty, I think Prussia under Bismarck seems to have prepared a whole set of plans to nibble away step by step. We need to be prepared for this." William IV still did not express his opinion. He looked at Mackay Sean, the director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency next to him, and said, "Tell them your intelligence." Intelligence? Nicholas Pearson and Joseph Karls knew that there might be an unexpected event that they didn't know about. At the same time, they also knew that they might have guessed the direction wrong. At present, the French Empire has fallen into a disadvantage. It has been trying hard to resist, but to no avail. Mackay Sean revealed the so-called Situation Report. You may not know that just yesterday, November 8, 1869, British Foreign Secretary Russell's low-key visit to Berlin ended. Today, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Empire also summoned the Prussian ambassador to Prussia. Britain and Russia have both launched a diplomatic offensive against Prussia in the past few days. These two countries will naturally not support Prussia's claim to launch a war to occupy France, so the only thing left is that Prussia may make some concessions. Thinking of this, they immediately knew that the next Franco-Prussian War might involve factors other than war. William IV looked at Cantor, the director of the Netherlands National Security Council and coordinator of Atlantic Affairs, who understood and pointed out, if this is the case, then Prussia's current high morale will have to be adjusted due to the intervention of various countries. However, I guess Prussia will not stop in a short time. Chief of Naval Staff Joseph Karls, why? Campbell, because it is not only self-defeating, making Prussia's efforts in recent days in vain, but also accidentally becoming the target of the anger of the Prussian people. Bismarck is so smart, He will naturally not let himself become such a cowardly loser. Campbell seemed to be able to see through the hidden political information that many people could not understand, and said, more importantly, Bismarck may not have intended to take over the entire French Empire from the beginning. Nicholas Pearson was inspired by this and suddenly woke up. He vaguely felt some ways, but it seemed to be blocked by a layer of membrane. Joseph Karls is a soldier's sharpener. He said directly, "What does Mr. Campbell mean?" "Bismarck is waiting for a good price." Campbell said with a smile, "However, all this has been expected by your majesty. Next, it depends on whether Bismarck follows the script we gave him." "Follow your majesty's script?" Nicholas Pearson and Joseph Karls looked up at William IV. William IV said, "Bismarck is very slippery. It's always right for us to be careful. Also, we are about to enter Prussia. Some Prussians were dissatisfied with our closure of the Luxembourg Channel some time ago. Be careful of those who have lost their minds." Chapter 596, Battleship Exercise. Shells hit our battleships? In the eastern waters of the North Sea in the northern Atlantic Ocean, the Netherlands, which belongs to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, is the flagship of a joint exercise between the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden. Jan Peter, the Minister of the Navy of the Netherlands, is directing the exercise. He brought the ambassadors of the British, Russian, Austrian and Prussian embassies in the Netherlands, in addition to the naval ministers of the Netherlands and other 3 countries, to watch today's exercise on the Netherlands. Looking through a telescope at the dozens of warships bombarding each other under the sound of artillery fire, it must be said that it is indeed pleasing to the eye. Even this kind of exercise is very rare in the UK. In order to save budget, the UK has never conducted such a large-scale exercise in terms of scale. Because of this, the British ambassador to the Netherlands, Robert, and the Austro-Hungarian ambassador to the Netherlands, Neil, looked at each other, both full of shock and vigilance. Jan Peter took in the looks of the 2 men and thought to himself, "This is the effect we want. However, if they appear later, you will feel the power of the Dutch Navy even more." At this time, Prussian ambassador to the Netherlands, Lot 8, asked, "The Dutch Navy is already one of the most powerful navies in the world." He suddenly smiled provocatively at Taylor. "If I knew we were off the coast of Amsterdam, I would have thought we were in a British naval exercise in the port of London." Jan Peter was shocked when he heard this. Prussia really didn't miss any opportunity to provoke others. He suddenly remembered that the Dutch Chief of Staff Mark Rudd had mentioned before that Britain was currently wary of the Netherlands, and that Prussia was beginning to lay the groundwork for confrontation with Britain in the post-Franco-Prussian War era. He couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that Prussia had indeed begun to prepare for the future Anglo-Prussian struggle. La Haye's words made the Russian Empire's ambassador to the Netherlands, Molly Dijev, follow up, "Indeed, I watched the British Navy's exercises in London 3 years ago, but to be honest, the exercises at that time did not shock me as much as the ones in the Netherlands now." Neil, the Austro-Hungarian ambassador to the Netherlands, carefully looked at the British ambassador to the Netherlands, Robert, who seemed to have no intention of refutation except that the other party looked unhappy. So Neil said, "Everyone knows the development of the Netherlands in recent years, both economically and militarily. This has also laid the foundation for the Netherlands to become the second largest seller of military equipment in the world in the past few years." As he finished speaking, the British ambassador Robert's face turned completely black. Jan Peter knew that these 3 people were irritating Robert in order to increase Britain's resentment towards the Netherlands. They had evil intentions. He hurriedly looked at Robert, who narrowed his eyes and looked at the few people, but did not speak and continued to pick up the telescope and stare into the distance. Obviously, he knew that these people had ulterior motives, so he simply ignored them. His main focus was on the Amsterdam, the only steam battleship sent by the Netherlands this time. Suddenly, he found something interesting. In the sea around the steam battleship Amsterdam in the distance, there seemed to be a big shark swimming from time to time. At first, he thought it was a lost shark, but slowly he found the troops. Yes, the shark seemed to be circling around the steam battleship. Not only him, but also on the surrounding battleships, some sharks seemed to emerge from time to time. Is it an illusion? After rubbing his eyes, he looked again. 3 minutes later, a shark was found on the battleship next to him. Not only Robert, but now the Prussian ambassador to the Netherlands, Lot 8, the Austro-Hungarian ambassador to the Netherlands, Neil, and the Russian Empire ambassador to the Netherlands, Molly Dijev, also discovered this abnormality. The shark actually swam under the battleships of various countries, and the people on the battleships didn't know. They just praised the Dutch Navy for its strength, but now they felt that they were hitting their mouths. The ambassadors of Prussia, Austria and Russia stationed in the Netherlands all chose to do it, as if they didn't want to ridicule the host, so as not to make the Netherlands feel bad. However, the ridicule under their noses could not be concealed. They were all like this, not to mention the British ambassador. In order to correct the fact that Britain was the most powerful naval power in the world, Robert said with a hint of sarcasm, "The Netherlands' defense is indeed powerful, but there are serious deficiencies in defense." He looked at Jan Peter, Swedish Navy Minister de Carr, and Danish Navy Minister listened as if he was far from giving up, and said with a smile, "Unfortunately, the British Empire's naval defense is very tight, and it has both offense and defense." But to his surprise, these three people did not feel dissatisfied at all. In fact, he saw little gratitude on Jan Peter's face. Yes, it was a counterattack against him, who had just made a speech to mock the Dutch Navy's weak defense. Jan Peter smiled and replied, "There is no absolute way. Good things are always behind." In addition to the Swedish and Danish people, even the heads of the embassies in Denmark and Sweden were confused. Jan Peter and others did not explain. However, he made an okay gesture to the flagship commander next to him. Immediately, Robert and his companions understood that the good show was yet to come. They couldn't help but wonder, are we going to start fighting the great shark? Several people sneered softly. It was already this time. What was the point of fighting well? So, the four people were in a particularly good mood, especially Robert. He had already put a big question mark on the combat effectiveness of the Dutch warships because of the shark approaching the warship. He would write a telegram to Queen Victoria, the Prime Minister's office and the British Foreign Office after returning to London. It would naturally report the mistakes of the Dutch Navy and the other three countries. Well, the name was a Dutch Navy with nothing but appearance, the other people were also thinking, and seemed to be brewing the draft of the telegram after returning. However, suddenly a huge sound wave came, and the first-class sailing battleship Holland could not help shaking. Even, they couldn't help but look up and pick up the telescope to look at the place where the loud noise came from on the left-hand side in front of them. They remembered that it was called the Hague 5 class sailing battleship when Jan Peter introduced it just now. Why did it seem to be bombarded all of a sudden? Could it be that the navies of the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden were firing in the wrong direction? Then the shells reached the Hague? If this is true, then it is really ridiculous. The Netherlands and other Nordic alliances fired shells in the wrong direction for the first time in a drill and actually attacked their own warships? Think about it, this news is enough to shock the world. Robert was eager to go back to the embassy right now and send this good news back to London to let the senior officials in London breathe a sigh of relief. At this moment, there was another loud noise from the battleship, and flames and thick smoke billowed from it, as if it was hit by a shell again. But Robert did not see the incoming shells, which made it very difficult for them to find which such a strange warship it was. Where did the shells come from? My relatives are having a wedding banquet today, so I was busy and updated only now. Sorry. Chapter 597, The World Impact of the Advent of Submarines. Just as the ambassadors of Britain, Prussia, Tsarist Russia, and Austria-Hungary wanted to find out what was going on and therefore stared at the smoking warship, they suddenly showed incredible eyes. With the help of the high magnification of the telescope, he, actually saw a fast-moving underwater object attacking the Hague Level 5 battleship on the left from the right. The waves rolled up as the object moved quickly, 20 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 1 second, the next second, the Hague battleship shook again, and then tilted towards them and slowly went down. After a minute and a half, the entire ship was swallowed by the waves and sank below the water level. That thing actually attacked the Hague Level 5 battleship from underwater? What is so powerful? The direction where this thing just swam was actually empty. Where did it come from? Several people couldn't help but raise questions. They were about to look at Yang. At that time, they suddenly showed astonishment, because at this time something slowly surfaced. No way? It was the shark just now? They couldn't help but feel strange. A shark actually fired something to kill a Dutch battleship? Although it was only a level 5 sailing battleship, it was still a huge monster for a shark. What did it use to do it? At this moment, including the British ambassador to the Netherlands, Robert, they were secretly glad that they didn't send a telegram back so quickly, otherwise, it would be embarrassing. At this time, the shark actually seemed to be very proud and swam over slowly. When it swam 300 meters away, it stopped again, slowly emerged, and paid a quarter of the way. To their surprise, there was a Dutch flag on the top. There was a Dutch flag on the back of the shark. Too incredible, right? At this moment, Dutch Foreign Minister Jan Peter pointed to the shark that had already surfaced more than half of the water and said, "This is the culprit for the silence of the Hague Level 5 battleship just now." It was indeed it. Although Robert and others had already guessed it, they were still shocked by Jan Peter's answer at this moment. The Netherlands used sharks to attack battleships? What kind of shark is so powerful? The Netherlands has a senior animal trainer who can make sharks so obedient? But how are the shells fired? This series of questions all popped up in their minds. Jan Peter, this is our latest naval weapon in the Netherlands, called a submarine, and it is also the second naval branch of the Netherlands. It belongs to the underwater warship. Neil, the Austro-Hungarian ambassador to the Netherlands, was surprised. Underwater warship? Submarine? Isn't this the civilian submarine that the United States and France have reported before? But isn't it said that the submarine's range is only a few kilometers, or even 20 kilometers at most? But now it is more than 50 nautical miles away from the Amsterdam port terminal. Neil asked for an explanation. The Netherlands has solved the range problem, and even equipped it with weapons, and it only took 3 shells to attack a 5-level battleship and silence the submarine. Robert's face became even gloomier when he heard it. The Netherlands actually created an underwater submarine that can attack warships? And just now, several people were scared. In just less than 10 minutes, a battleship sank in front of him. Robert knew that this time, the British Empire was in trouble. The other people also looked back and forth at the British ambassador to the Netherlands, Robert, and the Dutch Navy Minister Jan Peter with ill intentions. Needless to say, this surprise of the Netherlands is definitely a big deal for Britain. The British Empire, which claims to be the strongest navy and the maritime hegemony, has finally met its opponent. On November 9, 1869, a military news completely shocked the entire world, and it was the starting point of a naval military revolution that completely changed the current situation. It turned out that overseas outside the port of Amsterdam, the capital of the Netherlands, the navies of the 3 Nordic countries of the Netherlands, Denmark, Prussia and Sweden were conducting a joint naval exercise. The invited Nordic alliance partner countries, the British Empire, the Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Kingdom of Prussia, the ambassadors to the Netherlands, observed the entire process on the flagship of the exercise, the Holland Class 1 sailing battleship. However, the appearance of a Dutch submarine broke everyone's surprise. After everyone knew what happened, the world's attention seemed to be shocked by this unexpected surprise. Most of the attention was actually transferred from the Franco-Prussian War to the exercises outside the port of Amsterdam, the Netherlands for the first time. It is even said that in London, many reporters and government intelligence personnel have been trying their best to collect intelligence on Dutch submarines. However, all these actions seemed to be in vain the next day, because, under the command of Jan Peter, the Netherlands actually spent more than 20 similar submarines on the surface in the last day of exercises in the port of Amsterdam. They actually have combat power in groups? When this news came out, the world was shocked. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but look at London, because Britain is currently the most powerful naval power. The rise of the Netherlands, a powerful navy, and the rise of the Netherlands with epic secret weapons, submarines, is a huge impact on Britain's decades of maritime hegemony. Will Britain accept the challenge to its position? Will it recognize the status of the Netherlands after its rise? All these made everyone wait for London's reaction. British Empire, Buckingham Palace. I think the Netherlands and the British Empire are both maritime powers. Both the Netherlands and the United Kingdom like to suppress and check the land powers on the continent of Asia and Europe. On this point, the interests of the Netherlands and the United Kingdom are the same. Therefore, the Netherlands hopes that the British Empire and the Netherlands will form an alliance to maintain maritime power and govern the world. The words of King William IV of the Netherlands in Athens suddenly rang in her ears. Looking at the intelligence about Dutch submarines in her hand, Queen Victoria suddenly had a headache. This William IV is really like a monkey spirit, so slippery. Submarines, perhaps, it's time for Britain to start following the Netherlands to develop them with all its strength. On November 10, 1869, the Strategic and Budgetary Assessment Centre, a think tank at the University of Oxford, the British Empire, recently published a report entitled Britain's Choice, a new method for assessing the leading Dutch Navy battleships in the European times. The above prediction was made. As of January 1869, the Kingdom of the Netherlands Navy had 5 steam battleships, based on actual combat deployment, and 6 steam battleships under construction. At the same time, Jan Peter, Minister of the Dutch Navy, has publicly stated that the Kingdom of the Netherlands has more than 40 submarines of the same type in the exercise, including 20 in the mainland and 20 in the Far East. He also stated that in the future, the Netherlands will continue to increase the production of Dutch submarines to use them to maintain the security of the Netherlands territory in a more favorable way. Chapter 598: The difficult situation of the British Empire. According to a report in the European Times, according to the research of the Strategic and Budgetary Assessment Centre, a think tank at the University of Oxford, the Dutch military has the resources to support its continued reform of the naval leadership plan after the 1870s. The results of the model analysis of the budget and growth rate of the Dutch Navy by the Institute show that it is expected that until the early 1880s, the Dutch military will still implement a higher military budget than the budgets of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, the American Confederation, Italy and other countries after the price increase, but the military budget scale is smaller than that of the United Kingdom, France and Prussia. The Strategic and Budgetary Assessment Centre, a think tank at the University of Oxford, predicts that with the amazing emergence of the Dutch submarines that led the world, the Dutch Navy will no longer focus on surface ships in the future. Reducing the surface fleet and continuing to expand the advantages of underwater submarines may be the trend in the next decade, and other countries in the world, including Britain and Prussia, will be dragged into the submarine strategy. At the same time, old surface ships such as sailing warships will be gradually eliminated and their number will become smaller and smaller. In other words, the Netherlands will focus on cultivating steam battleships that can rival the British and French in terms of combat power in case of emergencies. Underwater, the Netherlands will become the king of underwater combat and the ability to project military power on the international stage. According to the Strategic and Budgetary Assessment Centre, a think tank at the University of Oxford, the Netherlands' military power in the world is mainly steam battleships, sailing battleships of various levels, submarines, etc. Specifically, the Dutch Navy will grow into an ocean-going navy that operates at least 20 steam battleships and 100 submarines by 1880. As the advantage of submarines expands, the current position of the British Empire as the world's #1 in naval power will be in jeopardy. The combat power of the Netherlands in 1880 depicted by the Strategic and Budgetary Assessment Centre, a think tank at the University of Oxford, immediately warned the British Empire, especially the British Empire Navy entered a state of emergency. The British Empire currently has 2 ships in the Channel Fleet, stationed in the English Channel, 2 ships in the Indian Ocean Fleet, 2 ships in the Atlantic Fleet, stationed in South Africa and Canada on the east coast of America, 2 ships in the Mediterranean Fleet, stationed in Egypt and Crete, and 2 ships in the North Sea Fleet. The Strategic and Budgetary Assessment Centre, a think tank at Oxford University, warned British Prime Minister Disraeli's cabinet government and Queen Victoria that in the future, these 8 steam battleships will not only face the navies of powerful countries such as France, Spain, Russia, and Austria, but also the Netherlands. In addition, the submarines that suddenly emerged in the Netherlands, so the British Navy's 32-ton tonnage is only second to France, 250,000 tons of surface ships, the Netherlands, 200,000 surface ships, and at least 50,000 tons of underwater ships, Spain, 180,000 surface ships, Tsarist Russia, 170,000 tons of surface ships, Austria-Hungary, 150,000 tons, Prussia, 140,000 tons of surface ships, Portugal, the United States of America, and Italy, 120,000 tons. Faced with so many threats at sea, the number of British surface ships may not be sufficient. Phil Davidson, former commander of the English Channel Fleet, who participated in the research of the Strategic and Budgetary Assessment Centre, a think tank of the University of Oxford, said, "At present, the British Empire has an advantage over France in terms of surface combat power, but it is at least 5 to 8 years behind the Netherlands in terms of underwater submarines. In the future, it is necessary to focus on widening the gap in surface warship combat power with France and the Netherlands, and quickly build British naval forces and form a certain ability to suppress the Netherlands. For this reason, The former commander of the English Channel Fleet proposed to the British Disraeli government and Queen Victoria that the British Empire should expand the tonnage of surface warships and maintain its position as the first naval power. The tonnage should at least reach the sum of the second and third countries after Britain. As soon as the proposal of the former British naval commander came out, countless British responders immediately. At the same time, this British military eagle brand represents the agent of the British arms dealer. He has connections with the 3 major military ports and 3 major shipyards established in the UK and Ireland. This was a pressure from the military, forcing Queen Victoria and Disraeli's cabinet government to discuss it. Prime Minister Disraeli seemed to be very urgent and said, "The Netherlands actually made such a weapon." It must be said that this put the entire British military in a passive position. Your Majesty, the current British practice is naturally to protect the Netherlands to dominate underwater. We must stop this situation that allows the Netherlands to dominate underwater. To this end, our cabinet government will promote the British Navy's submarine bill in the next week, and strive to pass the budget bill in the British House of Commons and the House of Lords at the same time. Queen Victoria didn't buy it, and asked directly, "How much budget does the government need?" Disraeli, £5 million so much? Queen Victoria immediately looked at the former unhappily. Disraeli coughed twice before smiling bitterly. At present, the 3 major shipyards in the British Isles have proposed their own plans. Your Majesty knows that these 3 shipyards are currently competing in the market. Davidson, the former commander of the Channel Fleet, is now their spokesperson. It can be imagined that if the budget is not enough, they can only bid. In that case, these 3 shipyards are not vegetarians. At that time, the forces behind the Navy and the military made trouble. Queen Victoria was silent when she heard this. The 3 major shipyards are all supported by different consortiums. In the past, because the British shipyards built a British fleet according to their own allocation of various levels of ships, the original appearance of steam battleships made the 3 major shipyards with their own ulterior motives ready to move. Now facing the emergence of new types of maritime ships, it would be strange if they could sit still. Therefore, they asked the British government to provide orders. They wanted to confidently form their own submarine research and development and manufacturing team. It was precisely because they needed to lay out the 3 major shipyards to subsidize research and development funds that the number was relatively large. Disraeli was facing the risk of having his budgets blocked by the House of Commons and the House of Lords, so he turned to the Queen for help. Disraeli then explained, institutional research and development, weapons support, spare parts supply chain, manufacturing and assembly, launching. There are also submarine crew training fees and salaries, etc., which all require time and money, so the budget is not small. Not only is it not small, it is too large, accounting for almost 1/20th of the UK's national fiscal budget. As if to put further pressure on the budget, Disraeli said nervously, "At present, all countries have begun to use the Dutch submarine as a model to promote the submarine project. I think the 3 major shipyards of the British Empire are carrying out the project at the same time, which is not an advantage. And forgive me for being frank, according to the news sent back by the intelligence, countries with the ability such as France, Austria-Hungary, Tsarist Russia, Spain and even the United States of America have developed their own submarine projects. Other countries such as Sweden, Portugal, Sweden, Denmark, the Ottoman Empire and South American countries have expressed their willingness to order submarines from the Netherlands." He raised his head worriedly and looked at Queen Victoria with a wry smile and said, "At present, we are the largest country selling arms and are in danger in front of the Netherlands. Now the appearance of submarines has put us on the edge of being pulled to the second place. Perhaps starting next year, we will not be able to maintain our position." Queen Victoria's face changed drastically. Arms exports have always been the core of Britain's dominance in the world. This arms business is not only because it is a business, but also because it represents the improvement of Britain's external strategic advantage. When countries buy British naval products, the warships made in Britain will be worn out in war exercises in the country. Whether it is parts or shells, they need the support of Britain, and such heavy equipment often needs the approval of the British government. At this time, it will cause the buyers to rely on the technology of the 3 major British shipyards and obey certain requirements of the British Empire, especially in diplomacy. The buyers will unconsciously follow the British diplomatic line in handling foreign relations. This is also why the medium and small countries in Europe that do not have the ability to build ships are unwilling to offend Britain easily, Because they are afraid that when Britain cuts off the supply of warships, the British warships purchased by the country will be without guns, spare parts, and technicians to repair. Now countries are buying submarines from the Netherlands that require high-end technical support, which is a technology that even Britain, a naval power, does not have. Queen Victoria can foresee the final result of these purchasing countries. William IV's confident face suddenly appeared in Queen Victoria's mind. William IV of the Netherlands is indeed as cunning as a fox. A submarine can instantly disintegrate a lot of Britain's advantages. At least, it will be difficult to reverse this situation in the short term. Thinking of this, Queen Victoria sighed. Britain's status seems to be declining. Perhaps, if we really agree to William IV, it is not a bad idea to cooperate with the Netherlands and sea power. However, I am unwilling to transfer New Zealand to William IV. After looking down at the British Prime Minister Disraeli for a while, she sighed again, so she told Disraeli the conversation between William IV and her in Athens. The latter was shocked. Disraeli could imagine that if the Netherlands was supporting Britain's status as the world's first naval power, then Britain would have enough support to make up for the current dilemma. Many problems were also solved. For example, in the Franco-Prussian War, Britain had more room for maneuver. What's more, if Britain had the support of the Netherlands, its influence on the European continent might be further enhanced. With the support of the Netherlands, the offshore balancer would be more adept at balancing the European powers. However, the Netherlands has become an indispensable partner of Britain. Is this a benefit or a disadvantage? It is really hard to say at present. Queen Victoria and Disraeli looked at each other and expressed their worry. Chapter 599 Bismarck, give up hostility towards the Netherlands. The Dutch submarines shocked the most. In addition to Britain, the world's most powerful navy, the top leaders of both sides of the Franco-Prussian War were also stunned. On November 11, 1869, Queen Eugenie in Paris, France, breathed a sigh of relief, because she had just used the small Indian Ocean archipelago to send the Netherlands away from helping Prussia, and the Franco-Dutch relations had begun to thaw, and the Dutch and French diplomatic envoys returned to their posts again. Therefore, the appearance of the Dutch submarines at this time brought more shock to Paris, and there was also a sense of luck. No one wanted to deal with the unknown evil. France was exhausted in the face of Prussia. At this time, facing the Netherlands, which was one level lower, it would naturally not be in a high-handed manner. Even Napoleon III in Reims, who was originally dissatisfied with Queen Eugenie's private trading of territory with the Dutch regent Queen Alexandra, turned from cloudy to sunny at this moment, and was glad for Eugenie's actions. For this reason, he could not help but speed up the deployment of the army in Reims. He wanted to organize a large-scale counterattack to completely drive Prussia out of French territory and save his lost face. However, compared with Napoleon II's forgetfulness, Bismarck and his men looked extremely solemn. I didn't expect that William IV would have such a trick. It's really wonderful. William I felt helpless at this moment. It must be said that Bismarck and his men actually had ambitions to advance or retreat towards the Netherlands in their plans. But Bismarck and William I have always been hesitant, because William IV seems harmless but is actually very dangerous. Chief of the General Staff Moltke exclaimed in admiration, before, when passing through the Duchy of Luxembourg, I was wondering why the Netherlands proposed an expiration date of October 20th. Who knew that the Netherlands would quietly extort two small island groups from France in the Indian Ocean? Moltke said to William I, around October 20th, the Netherlands made the French Empire love and hate each other. It can be said that they are masters at playing with people's nature, and other countries are also surprised that the Netherlands is so good at playing. Now with the emergence of submarines, it is no longer appropriate for major powers to look down on the Netherlands. William I also said, yes, I didn't understand why William IV let the Netherlands move to those remote islands in the Far East for development. At that time, I was still wondering if the Netherlands was not afraid of making wedding clothes for Britain. Now I finally understand that William IV has something to rely on. The world's third largest surface warship tonnage, plus the world's unique 50,000-ton underwater submarine force. Even Britain, the world's strongest navy, faces such a Dutch combination. I believe that anyone with a little brain knows that this is not the right time to show any ambition to the Netherlands. William I took a deep breath, exhaled loudly, and stared at Prime Minister Bismarck meaningfully. Prime Minister, the Netherlands is not suitable to go east at present. I don't want all the coastlines of Prussia to face the blockade of the Netherlands on the surface and underwater. Bismarck did not object when he heard this. He must be strong. Although William IV was not on the Netherlands, it must be admitted that the hand left by William IV really shocked the whole of Europe and even the world. At this time, Bismarck was still thinking about the small piece of land in the Netherlands, which was really not worth a loss. Your Majesty and Lord Moltke, please rest assured that I will not impulsively touch the Netherlands, which is now soaring. But speaking of it, Britain is the country that should be most worried about the rise of the Dutch Navy. Bismarck sneered, I think London must be very troubled now. After all, even if the number one in naval power does not lose this time, it will be pulled down from the altar. Moltke said, that Guy Davidson actually called on Britain to increase its surface warships to the total tonnage of the second and third competitors. I think this should be a very important suggestion for Britain before submarines are built. Your Majesty, Prime Minister, I think it is time for Prussia to increase its surface ships. Excuse me, if we compare according to our international status, our navy should be called the third or second strongest navy in the world. Even if we can't compare with the Netherlands and France, we should occupy the fourth position. In this way, our army will not face threats at sea. Moltke's statement was agreed by William I and Bismarck. Obviously, in the face of the rapid expansion of the navies of the European countries around them, Prussia was only ranked as the seventh naval power together with Portugal and Italy, which was no longer in line with its own status. They all realized that the navy would be one of the future directions of Prussia's military. Bismarck nodded and said, the Netherlands, they really know how to plan. William I and Moltke looked at him in confusion. Bismarck, Prussia's current shipbuilding capabilities are similar to its current status. Chief of the General Staff Moltke should know more about it than I do. It is true that the Netherlands supported Prussia's warship construction before, but they were all level 5 battleships, level 4 battleships, etc. After that, the level 3, 2, and 1 battleships slowed down our learning speed, but we still learned them. However, this also made them wary of us, and led us astray from the development of steam battleships. Therefore, Prussia's current shipbuilding progress is only in the medium tonnage part, and high tonnage construction still requires the support of the Netherlands. Your Majesty, the Netherlands launched submarines this time, which is a reminder to us that we still need to rely on the Netherlands' maritime support, and it is a warning to us not to act rashly against the Netherlands mainland. With Bismarck's confession, William I's face darkened, and he smiled bitterly. So, are we all in William IV's calculations? That's not the case, Bismarck objected, shaking his head. The rise of Prussia is an inevitable trend. Queen Victoria of England knows that she can't stop it, nor does she want to. And William IV of the Netherlands sees this clearly, and has promoted it to gain benefits. So they are just taking advantage of the rise of our kingdom. It's just that William IV is more effective in pulling chestnuts from the fire, and he gets a bigger piece of the pie. He also pointed out, William IV has to take seriously the strategic agreement between Austria-Hungary and Joseph I. He said sternly, the Netherlands and Austria-Hungary cannot form an alliance. With the Russian Empire in the north and the French Empire in the south, Prussia will be attacked from both sides. Now it is the key to cripple the French Empire. Therefore, the Netherlands is suitable for appeasement. Next, the three people made another successful statement. The Netherlands did not move for the time being. Not only that, the three people also agreed to win over the Netherlands. William IV embarked on the road to visit Prussia on November 11, 1869, which was the best opportunity for Prussia to win over the Netherlands. Therefore, the three top Prussian politicians decided that after William IV arrived in Berlin, he would persuade the Netherlands to cooperate more closely. William IV, who had just set foot in Dresden, the capital of Saxony under the Kingdom of Prussia, naturally did not know that the top figures in Berlin who were waiting for his arrival had already planned the content of the next meeting. What he may not know is that, thanks to the emergence of Dutch submarines, the Netherlands, the world's second largest arms seller, is already striving to become the world's number one, and its customers are spread all over the world. Chapter 600. What I am worried about is the collapse of the French Empire. 1869, when the world was discussing the advent of the Dutch military submarine, the Franco-Prussian War was still going on fiercely. On the morning of November 12, the Prussian army occupied Chalons, the capital of the Marne province, between Reims, where Napoleon II was stationed, and Chaumont, the capital of the Upper Marne province, where the temporary commander of the 4th and 5th armies of the Metz Corps, Radmiro, was located. The city is the capital of the Marne province. The sudden occupation of Chalons, the capital of the Marne province, successfully cut off the connection between Reims and Chaumont, the military strongholds in eastern France, and also allowed the Prussian army to gather more and more land forces in the east to enter France. The two cities were like isolated islands, and the situation was precarious. On November 14, 1869, the three Prussian corps came out together and suddenly blocked the French army from the west of the two cities. Napoleon III and Radmiro, the commander of the Metz Corps, both broke through in a very embarrassing way. However, the three Prussian corps also carried out a counter-breakout. In the afternoon of the same day, the Prussian army also completed its attack on the French army and attacked with powerful artillery. In the afternoon, after the French army failed to break through several times, Napoleon III was forced to send a letter to William I at 5 p.m., expressing his willingness to hand over the sword in his hand, which represented the symbol of the French Emperor, to His Majesty King William I of Prussia. On November 16, 1869, the news that Napoleon II was surrounded in Reims and the remaining forces of the Metz Corps were also surrounded in Chaumont swept across Europe like a tornado, and the whole country of France was in an uproar. Paris, which was close to the edge of Reims, was even more panicked. On November 18, 1869, the regent of the French Empire, Queen Eugenie, and the Prime Minister of France, Charles, respectively requested William I and Bismarck to negotiate peace with France and Prussia. To everyone's surprise, Queen Eugenie actually invited Britain to act as a coordinator for the armistice. For this reason, Berlin stopped the attack and made a move of siege but not attack. However, Prussia was still constantly dispatching troops into the territory of King Prussia's France. Obviously, Prussia was unwilling to give up the advantage of victory at hand. At the same time, on November 18, 1869, King William IV of the Netherlands arrived in Berlin and made the most important stop of his state visit to the Kingdom of Prussia, Berlin. He was greeted outside the city of Berlin by Prime Minister Bismarck. Bismarck was only 54 years old at this time, when the politician was most energetic. William IV and Bismarck smiled in tacit understanding. After completing the etiquette, Bismarck began to take the lead in leading William I and his party to their destination. This itinerary could have been arranged for a special person to do it, but what puzzled William IV was that Bismarck actually did it himself. William IV turned his eyes and understood that there was no benefit without early rise. The old fox in front of him must be the kind of old fox who would not come to the temple for no reason. Forget it, the enemy will be stopped by the generals and the water will be covered by the earth. The temporary residence of Bismarckian William IV was a palace in Prussia. From the Dutch ambassador to Prussia Westman, it was learned that this was the palace of the previous king and William I's elder brother, Frederick William IV. This surprised William IV. But to be honest, the scenery of this palace is pretty good. After everything was arranged, William IV and William I held talks the next day. Our East Oman believes that Prussia will not break its promise, right? In the Berlin Palace, William I and William IV were divided into two rows on the left and right, and the subordinates of both sides held talks face to face. William IV went straight to the point. Now Prussia has taken over the entire northern east and occupied nearly 1/5 of France's territory. Now that you have almost taken over Reims and Chaumont, two important military towns in the east, I think it will be quite easy for you to fulfill your promise. Anyway, the Duchy of Luxembourg has already borrowed a passage from Prussia, and you have caught France off guard. I think we should get the reward I deserve. William IV took the initiative and showed that he was here to collect a debt, instead of the previous speculation that he took the land route from Greece to avoid France's anger. Besides, the dispute between the Netherlands and France had been settled, and there was nothing wrong with William IV's words. William I knew what William IV was thinking, but it was difficult to refute William IV's words, so he turned his attention to Bismarck. Bismarck knew what was meant by the expression on his face. Your Majesty's point is not bad, but I believe your Majesty also knows that we are in trouble now. William IV pretended to be a little annoyed and said, "That's your problem." Britain came forward to mediate. Do I have to intervene? Didn't we agree that we only provide Luxembourg with a passage, and after you win, you force the French Empire to cede East Oman to us? This is our agreement. But the agreement does not stipulate what the so-called victory refers to. Bismarck retorted. After Bismarck's words fell, the whole venue fell silent instantly. Is this to point out that Prussia wants to link victory to entering Paris? The Dutch side became embarrassed. The agreement did not specify the stage of victory, but it was obvious that the Netherlands had already supported Prussia's raid on the French Empire with a Luxembourg duchy. What happened next is your business, Prussia. Does the Netherlands have to indulge you until you can take over the entire French Empire before giving it to you? Bismarck's words made the atmosphere in the entire reception room suddenly cold. William IV suddenly laughed at this moment, as if a big stone was thrown into a pool of stagnant water, and the waves made the stagnant water come alive. William I and Bismarck looked at each other and realized that it was different when they met a master. Seeing that the atmosphere of the other party was broken, William IV smiled and said, "I also think that the French Empire will not easily compromise and transfer East Oman. So, I think that in this case, the Netherlands can carry out its own plan B." "What does your Majesty William IV mean?" William I immediately stared at William IV with a puzzled look. "Of course it's not cutting meat from the Kingdom of Prussia." William IV pointed out, "Recently, the British Empire is stepping up its contact with the Dutch Navy Department." After speaking, he looked at the Dutch Navy Chief of Staff Joseph Karls next to him. The latter stood up and said, "Yesterday, the British Empire officially placed an order with the Dutch Navy for 20 submarines in 5 years. We are currently hesitating whether the Netherlands should strengthen cooperation with the British Empire in this regard. Not only the British Empire, but the French Empire has also made the same request to the Netherlands. Currently, more than 10 countries in the world have placed orders for no less than 80 submarines, and the order volume has been scheduled until 1880. Joseph Karls, however, His Excellency General Staff Mark Rudd is currently hesitating. Does the British Empire have other intentions in making such an application for purchase, so he is waiting for Our Majesty's reply." William IV casually said at this time, "You may not know yet, just now Mackay Sean sent a message that Queen Victoria of the British Empire agreed to a request, but proposed that the Netherlands must allow the purchase of Dutch submarines. The Netherlands made a request to Britain? The Queen of England could actually obtain submarines with this request from the Netherlands? What request? Judging from William IV's look, it must be very important, right?" William I and Bismarck's hearts jumped, and they immediately had a bad premonition. William IV, Britain agreed to give the New Zealand Islands to the Netherlands. New Zealand Islands? It turned out to be it. William I and Bismarck were both shocked. They have been keeping a close eye on their neighbor, the Netherlands, in recent years. Whether it is the mainland or the Far East, they are all under their eyes. Therefore, they are very familiar with the Netherlands' territories in the Far East, Africa and other places. The New Zealand Islands are the tail of influence that Britain has always kept. There is even a small fleet of several battleships that keep swimming in the South Indian Ocean and the South Pacific, and interacts with Chile, Britain's ally in the East, at sea. Therefore, the New Zealand Islands play a significant role in Britain. It can be said that it is the best springboard for the British Empire to monitor the Netherlands. With a Malay island in the north, the combination of the north and the south, the Netherlands is like a turtle in a jar, unable to escape the British surveillance. But now they actually heard that Britain is willing to transfer the New Zealand Islands to the British Empire? And the King William IV in front of the Netherlands told them legitimately that this was because the New Zealand Islands were exchanged for barter. However, when he thought that even the British Empire was willing to use a large archipelago to exchange for 20 Dutch submarines, William I couldn't help but feel itchy and wanted to get it. Who is Bismarck? He naturally knew that William IV was reminding them that Prussia, we cannot have East Oman, which you broke your promise, but rest assured, we also have the means to check and balance you. The British Empire and other countries will ask the Netherlands to buy submarines. The Netherlands has a lot of means to retaliate against Prussia, but it is not retribution in this life, or to put it more simply, the good show is just behind. While chatting and laughing, William IV reversed the atmosphere created by William I and Bismarck that the Netherlands wanted Prussia, and turned it into a situation where Prussia had to compromise with the Netherlands. What everyone noticed was that William IV was very direct and fierce. This time, it was the turn of the Prussians to feel depressed. On the contrary, the Dutch side raised their heads a lot. Leave a way out for others so that we can meet again in the future. William IV, who understood the truth deeply, broke the silence at this time and said to King William I of Prussia, "In fact, I think that the French Empire still needs more means of suppression. Otherwise, it is not cost-effective for Prussia to mobilize so many troops this time." Changing the topic is also a kind of chat. Bismarck and the others would naturally not refuse this step down. Bismarck asked, "What does your Majesty William IV mean?" William IV, Napoleon III is no longer able to survive. It is not difficult for Prussia to defeat him. The difficulty lies in one thing I am worried about. William I asked, "What is it?" End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.